killed this man. Oh my God. They done killed this man. Oh my God, he got to be dead now.
It's like assassination by video.
Justice for Aiyana Jones. The banner was flown over Detroit on Monday. The plane traveling between her former home on Detroit's east side and the prosecutor's office and police department downtown. 1 year after her tragic death at the hands of a Detroit police officer, no one has been charged.
Don't forget your nigger knocker.
I'm very lucky to be alive today.
Louima sat down with us this morning on Good Day New York, and he talked about moving forward after his incident and how it sent shockwaves throughout the city. 4 white police officers beat and sodomized the Haitian immigrant inside a bathroom in the 70th precinct in Flatbush, Brooklyn.
One of the major complaints that has emanated from virtually every urban black community in the nation regarding police treatment is that the police, because they are racist and bigoted, are disrespectful, crude, and brutal towards black citizens. Many emotionally unstable whites are attracted to the job because the authority that is characteristic of the police role affords an opportunity for them to act upon these prejudiced, sick attitudes.
The cop, they said, pushed her against the wall, and her son was on his back at the time, and he raised up and asked, "What are you doing to my mom?" And the officer shot him while he was on the ground.
The car belongs to the Tolans. It wasn't stolen. Police say Robbie Tolan and his cousin were unarmed. As for the officer who shot him, he is white.
Well, in California, a white California transit cop who shot and killed an unarmed black train passenger is now a free man, and a judge's decision to let him out of prison early sparking some new protests. Well, a jury sentenced 29-year-old Jahans Meserly to 2 years in prison for the 2009 New Year's Day shooting, but last week a judge released him after he served a mere 11 months.
The way we interact with police, I think, it seems like we really don't understand when we come in contact with enforcement officials what white supremacy means, that you are in a vulnerable position as it relates to white people. You have a lot less power than the white army anywhere in the world, anywhere in the known universe. And we seem to demonstrate that in a real pitiful manner when we come in contact with enforcement officials. Could you share your view on that?
Yes, and it's codified, too, exactly how you should act at all times, without exception, and that is comply, both by word and deed. Do what you're told. Get out of the car. I don't care what kind of names I call you and all like that. If you're told to get out of the car, get out of the car. If you're told to put your hands in there, put your hands in there. If you're told to halt, halt. I mean, these demonstrations after you have been killed make no sense at all. Shot in the back of the head while running, while fleeing. And woe is me. Police brutality over and over again, decade after decade. Stop playing. There's nothing to play with. Put your hands on top of the car, put your hands on top of your head, drop to your knees, whatever you're told to do. For a very logical, and I'm going to emphasize, logical reason. You're in a vulnerable position. You're not in position to show opposition. And when you think that you're in position to, 99 chances out of 100, you are going to lose. Big time. Now, we haven't learned that by now. Then we need to take some more lessons and have what I'm saying now repeated over and over and over and over and over and over again until it sinks in. Because of what? The evidence. The evidence shows that running down the highway with a helicopter overhead usually gets you nothing. Stolen vehicle. Barricading yourself in some type of house or hut. and talking about you not coming out. The record shows you come out, dead or alive. And then people gathering around, throwing themselves over caskets over and over again, photograph after photograph. Mothers, aunts, cousins, homeboys with plenty of dreadlocks and tattoos, throwing themselves over over caskets, coming by an open casket, rest in peace. On the fence, teddy bears, candle lights, speeches about something got to be done about it. Stop playing like you're tough when you're not. That's the message. You're a prisoner of war. Act like one. Name, rank, serial number, hands in the air. You've been captured. Don't act like you haven't been. They've already got a make on you. Already got your fingerprints. You've already been computerized for life. Don't play like you have some kind of secret army, because you don't. You're alone. 3 sets of blinking lights. Get out and do what you're told. And no lip. None. Prisoner of war. Show some intelligence. But even as I speak now, there's somebody out there who isn't. Driving down the highway 40 miles an hour, driving up in people's yards and all like that. They're going to be dead in the next 5 minutes. And the report's going to say, it looks like he was going for a gun. You already know that. Why act like you don't? Everybody out there who's doing that kind of stuff, who's within the sound of my voice, that's who I'm talking to. You know the routine. Don't play like you don't. We play too much. Play, play, play. Everything is a movie scene.
Very
about
serious
nothing.
About not being very serious.
You haven't done anything? What are you running for? If you have done something, what are you running for? How far you think you can run? To the moon?
Police say they're looking into what happened, but deny any kind of racial profiling.
Don't forget your nigger knocker.
Context of White Supremacy. Justice, Gus T Renegade, in for another program, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Today's date, Wednesday, July 25th, 2012, so I have been told. 2 points before we get to our guests for the program. Number one, that sound clip really made just recognition. Kenneth Harding Jr., summer of 2011, black male, shot, killed, left to bleed to death in the middle of the street, broad daylight. Last summer, I know lots of people have probably forgotten that already. Black people, you saw the report that was just published, enforcement officers in this area of the world, the average is 1 black male every 40 hours. Black person killed. I think they said black person, not a black male, but typically it's black males most often. But every 40 hours, black person murdered by the enforcement officers in this area of the world. So I'm certain many people have forgotten about Kenneth Harding Jr., but the black male shot and killed in San Francisco last summer, about this time last summer. I thought it was quite significant. He was shot and killed for not having bus fare, and they alleged, of course, that he had a weapon. Just to compare and contrast to the recent terrorism in the Colorado theater, James Holmes, the White Knight terrorist, The enforcement officers, at least according to reports that I have seen, when they found him, he was heavily armed, all sorts of weapons, assault rifles, grenades, you name it, Kevlar. But I saw at least 2 reports that said that there was some confusion, that they almost did not recognize him as the shooter because of the arms that he had. They thought he was a member of the SWAT team. I saw more than one report that said that they almost overlooked him. They just thought he was another SWAT member on the lookout for the suspect. No shots fired at Mr. Holmes. Arrested in court, nodding off on the stand. No shots fired, not beaten, not batoned to death. Just comparison contrast in what happens on the plantation if you should be a black person. Very different treatment. That's number one. Number two, I was doing my research. I said, I'm trying to do a report on the white face of terrorism. Consistently, when it is a white person, be it Timothy McVeigh, Anders Breivik in Norway same time last year, the shooter down in Tuscaloosa just a couple days ago. They don't even talk about that anymore. Major media outlets, that's old news. They don't even talk about that now. When it is a white person, typically, it is not terrorism. They went out of their way to say that Breivik, this is not terrorism. He was just a little crazy, having some mental issues. Consistent pattern of it not being labeled terrorism unless it is a non-white person. As I was doing my research to compile this report, one interesting tidbit that I noted, there have been a lot of comparisons with the shooting at the theater in Colorado last week with white night terrorist James Holmes and the Columbine shooting 13 years ago. One interesting tidbit, Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bombing, convicted of the Oklahoma City bombings and executed for that crime, they felt that there was so much bias, so much anger about what he had done in Oklahoma City that there would be no way that he would be able to get an impartial trial there. So they moved the trial, check this out, where did they move the trial to? Denver, Colorado. How about that? No coincidences, cousins. Apparently, if you want to learn about terrorism, go to Denver. That is the spot for terrorism. Anyway, our guest for the program today, I was doing my research on July 4th, no less, doing my research and came across folks who had been labeled professional agitators for going out and just policing the police. Exercising their constitutional rights, being good citizens, going out and watching NYC's finest as they stop and frisk, arrest, detain citizens, frequently non-white citizens, in the New York City area. They were going out video recording these interactions, and they were labeled professional agitators. Wanted posters and the whole nine. Real interesting, I would say, very trifling, but predictable treatment of these folks who were not doing anything criminal, not going out name calling, cursing at the enforcement officers, or in any way inhibiting them from doing their job, just monitoring their conduct. They are servants and they are paid by taxpayers, and they were just going out to monitor and ensure that they were doing their jobs correctly. Thought it would be great to hear more about why they got involved in doing this work in the first place. As I've been told, they've also been actively involved in the Occupy Wall Street movement. Be good to hear about that as well. Just thought it would be great to hear more information from them and how they are responding to being labeled, quote unquote, professional agitators. We rescheduled. They were supposed to visit with us over the weekend, but we had some difficulties. We were able to reschedule and got our rain date makeup this evening. Joining us live from New York City, Mr. Matthew Swaye and Miss Christina Gonzalez. Miss Gonzalez and Mr. Swaye, are you with us?
Yeah, hey Gus, how are you?
Hi Gus.
I'm doing as well as I can. Thank you both for joining us. Very good to hear from you both. For our listeners who might not be informed about what it is that you all have been up to, could you give both of you give a little bit of background information, just anything that you think would be helpful for our listeners to know about you as we proceed with the program?
Yeah, we've been fighting stop and frisk specifically for about 10 months now, marching either literally or in spirit every day. And by in spirit, I mean we're going about our daily business, but our eye is particularly keen on checking out the police.
And me, I'm a native New Yorker. I've been here for about 25 years. I went to John Jay School of Criminal Justice, and while being there, I actually went to school with cops and people preparing to be lawyers and judges, and I just realized that being on that side wasn't going to change things the way I wanted to see change happen. So that's when I took my fight to the streets, and in September I started with Occupy Wall Street, and I found out about this movement to stop, and frisk, which quickly began the movement to end all police brutality, stop mass incarceration, and here we are today. So.
Right on. Okay. We'll get into more of the details around specifics of that, and then as well as what you all have been doing with your Copwatch program in the New York area. I guess, number one, this program, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that what is responsible for the quote-unquote stop and frisks in the New York City area and worldwide, as well as the mass incarceration of non-white people, especially black people worldwide, is the system of white supremacy. I use the two terms racism and white supremacy as synonyms, and I use the same definition for both terms. The definition is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that's an accurate definition?
I couldn't think of more an accurate definition. I think it's completely true. I mean, this is not something that's only in New York. This is not something only in our time right now. In fact, I think that it's probably worse than it's ever been, just because there's such a denial of it when so many of us know that it's true. And I would say that I think that we are at a point in time where we have the internet, we have radio right now, right? We're talking across the country. I've been accessing so much information that I wouldn't have been able to reach before, and I think many white people who do not feel this way are really, really playing a major role in what's happening right now, and I think that we're close to making this thing not exist anymore. I mean,
yeah. No, I mean, I think that's the best definition of. I think white supremacy is probably what I'm using when I'm speaking about this, as opposed to racism, which just through misuse and all the other things we do to language in this country, I think racism as a word may have already lost some of its meaning for people. But yeah, no, I think your description of the situation we're in is accurate, and I think on the one hand, I'm not optimistic at all. It seems like it's institutionally ingrained in just about everything. It's ubiquitous. It's pervasive. It's like this unspoken running joke of this country, and no one's allowed to point out. On the other hand, I know that I've come a long way in just a short time with exposure to new information on privilege, and I'm watching people around me coming along in, obviously not fast enough for to save even the lives of our neighbors, as we keep finding, but people are coming along. People are coming along. I think your description is 100% accurate, though.
Okay, right on. I think it's important. I'm not sure if people out there who are listening to the program, if they have seen you all. You can see the professional agitators posters that NYC's finest posted in the 30th precinct. If you haven't seen those, or the videos where Mr. Swaye and Ms. Gonzalez, where they have been speaking about these issues, for folks who haven't seen you all, Ms. Gonzalez, are you a white person or a non-white person?
Oh, well, my dad's mother is from Puerto Rico, and my grandfather was actually born in Cuba. And my mother she considers herself to be white. I mean, my grandparents were from somewhere in Europe, and I actually don't even know where they were from. My grandfather is actually a Southerner, a white man from the South, and my grandparents have 8 grandchildren, and they all happen to be mixed-race children. I mean, me and my sisters are Latina. My little sister is Indian. I have cousins that are African-American, and I have other cousins that are Jamaican. So, I mean, my family comes from Europe. Would I consider myself to be white? I don't think so.
Do you think other white people, other individuals who are white, do you think they would accept you as a white woman if you chose to classify that way?
I mean, they should accept me as whatever I want to classify myself as. But I think, I think there's a difference between how I classify myself and then how someone else is going to choose to classify me, whatever their belief system is, a white person who doesn't believe what I believe, I'm sure they wouldn't want to say that I'm white. But they can't deny that my parents, that my mother's family is of European descent. And yeah, I would say that I've seen people call me white, they've called me black, they've called me a coolie, they've said I'm Hispanic, Spanish, Latina. I mean, I've been called so many names, but I would consider myself a human being, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm a pink skin. I'm a white man.
Oh, okay. This is important. I'm not just trying to split hairs or what have you, but I found that it's very important on dialogues about white supremacy, racism, just racial classifications, because I think it's something that, as Mr. Swaye said, this problem is ubiquitous, and the classifications, they're everywhere. They're on driver's license forms. You fill them out at school, fill them out to get jobs. They're all over the place, and I don't think a lot of people, they're on the census. They're on a lot of important documents that people, I don't think, take enough time to really think about, and the significance of those classifications on a planet dominated by white supremacy. Mr. Swaye, you said you're a white person. Do you think, Ms. Gonzalez, do you think she's white?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, this is a woman that I love and adore and admire and aspire to be like in so many ways. I'm not spending a ton of time thinking about what racial classification she holds. I think of her. We travel through all the boroughs. We spend a lot of time in Manhattan, and I see Stina interacting with people across all lines in every way, and I think that's a very hopeful thing, that this social construct, this notion of race, has the potential to begin to dissolve. I think she's a living example of that.
It's funny. I've had so I've got dreads, and I've seen on comments on pictures of mine, and it's like, oh, this thing I hate most is white people with dreads, So in their head, I was a white person, and it pissed them off even more that I would give myself locks. But I kind of I almost see it more of it's kind of changing, not just being a skin color, like white. When you say white, what does that mean, or black? What does that actually mean? We hear people say oh, they act black or they act white. I think it's past just the color of one's skin. Like you said, white supremacy. We think of this whiteness, what it means to be good, or what it means to be wealthy, or what it means to speak correctly. These kind of things. So yeah, white.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. That's one of my rhetorical questions that I pitch on a regular basis on this program. What does it mean to be a white person? And I am in complete agreement. I have never seen anyone on the planet who has quote unquote white skin, white like the color of Elmer's glue or like computer paper. I've never seen anyone who has skin like that. So I would tell anyone that's about the importance of just really examining what it is that we're talking about, because I definitely don't think it's about quote unquote skin color. When someone says that they're white, I think they're talking about something that is very different. But I do think people are, at least from my observation, people are classified and accepted as being quote unquote white, whatever that means. And I do just try to get clarity, because for me, I'm a non-white person. I'm a black male. So I do try to make sure that I'm not confused about whether or not I'm talking to a white person or a non-white person, because that has a big impact on dialogue, what I'm thinking. I just think that's a crucial bit of information for folks to know when they're engaged in dialogue, to know if the person that you're talking to is white or not white. I just wanted to get clarification from one of our listeners. They just wanted to know if you could, Ms. Gonzalez, if you could repeat. You said your father was, did you say he was from Cuba, or am I confused?
So yeah, my father, he wasn't born in Cuba. His father was born in Cuba, and he came here when he was about 14 years old, like in the late 40s. And my grandmother is actually my father's mother's of Puerto Rican descent, but she was born in the States. And then my mother, both of her parents are white people, and they were born in the United States. They were born here and come from a long line of immigrants, actually, which is why I don't know precisely where they're from in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Can I say, too, that this is also a preoccupation for law enforcement, or the authorities, let's say, and something that we play with consciously from time to time. And so I think in them trying to figure out how to deal with us, this is very much part of their calculation, what the societal tolerance will be for us being attacked in certain ways. They're calibrating their attacks based on their notion of our race at any given point. So this winter, I was wearing a yarmulke and finding myself feeling actually quite safe with the "hello, sir" that I would get from officers, even with my public presence as something of a nuisance and someone who films the cops. So we are playing with the dynamics of how race and enforcement operate, and we're doing that in a public way. So that's part of their preoccupation as well. There's undercover officers that are from time to time trying to figure out what ethnicity we are, and that's a question that comes up.
Yeah, maybe that's like an interesting point. I mean, maybe not what I consider myself, but how I'm treated, or even how I could use that to my advantage. So certain days I may look like more of a white woman, and certain days I may seem more Latina to someone. And I think probably more often than not, I haven't been treated as a white woman, you know. Maybe it's more like, how do people treat you because of that?
Have you ever filled out the census or job application where they asked for your race or ethnicity, where they've asked you to classify that? And if so, what box do you mark?
You know, it's funny because, I mean, they have one for ethnicity, so you can put Hispanic or non-Hispanic. Then they ask race. And I feel like when I was younger, seeing that my mom was white and probably being around more white people in my neighborhood, you know, I feel like white was the box that I would check. Although now I wouldn't check that box. Either I don't, or I choose to consider myself black. But then I guess that's the kind of thing, right? Depending on what form you're filling out, what will you consider yourself? Like what could be to your advantage, and not everybody is in the kind of situation that I am.
And not everybody, of course, has that kind of flexibility in answering that question. I mean, the part of the privilege I'm trying to point out is that I can do characters, I can do shtick, and there's a chance someone's going to go along with it, or it's going to create conversation. I'm not defined by one characteristic. I'm not defined by skin color or otherness because of that. So that's a hell of a privilege.
Fascinating. Wow. That when I was watching some of your videos, particularly the video where Mr. Swaye is chasing down Commissioner Raymond Kelly to give him the Bull Connor Award. And I was thinking, oh, wow, look at this. This is most interesting. And then I was also thinking, wow, I don't think they would be responding to him in that way if he was not a white person. I think if some black people tried to do this, you would see a very different response from Mr. Kelly and enforcement officers, security folks who might be responsible for keeping Commissioner Kelly safe. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're looking at Oscar Grant's killer getting out of jail, and yeah, it's hard to think of what would have happened had a young black man from the South Bronx been in there using that language in that same way. It's hard to conceive of what would have went down.
Although, yeah, I mean, the way that they handled that situation, he was able to yell, and the commissioner just got in his car, and that was that. But now, knowing who he is and what he stands for and who he stands for, I'm sure that situation wouldn't play out the same this time. But I mean, you touched on it before, or we heard before earlier in the show, talking about this Batman killer. I mean, he was armed. He was fully armed to the point where they thought he was SWAT, right? And for some reason, he wasn't shot at. And constantly we have to hear of young men from our community being murdered because we thought they had a weapon. I mean, they knew this other man had weapons, assault rifles. He could have taken all these people out. And they didn't even, they just sweetly arrested him, and now he gets to sit on his trial. He gets his day in court. And I guess that's how it goes.
This reminds me of President Obama's policy with drone strikes in Pakistan, that anyone who they kill is a combatant, unless they find out afterwards that he wasn't. So it's a dead until innocent approach, and that we don't apply that thinking to white people. It's just not how we operate. But for almost everybody else, it seems like we're willing to tolerate 60-some-odd police killings of young black men in Chicago every year. We expect it. We know that NYPD is going to kick down some doors and shoot some unarmed black youth in their homes every year. It's not their innocence or their soul or their intellect or sense of humor or favorite time of day, for that matter, doesn't really come into any kind of media coverage.
Interesting. Context of white supremacy. Well, I want to, I guess, kind of go back, and you talked about this in one of your videos where you were talking to some young black males, Mr. Swaye, outside in New York, and New York's finest had just come by and wrote up some summons for these black males, saying that they were blocking the sidewalk, and you went to kind of chat with them, and you were saying that white people, they don't really understand what's happening exactly with these stop and frisks and how this relates to the system of racism, white supremacy. And you were saying even that you had just moved to this area. I think you said at the time of the video that you'd been there about 6 years and that you didn't have that understanding when you got there. Can you talk about, I guess, before you started to get this information, what were your views? What did you think about, the way police officers, enforcement officials, the way that they conduct themselves with black people? What were some of your views that you had before getting this information?
I mean, you could see how sort of scared I am in that video, and just kind of like shaken, and I'm not speaking clearly, and I feel pretty powerless in these kinds of. I don't really know how to affect the change I want to try and get at. Before I was active and kind of loud in public, I was writing. I was a playwright, and I thought that would be a way to communicate to people. So that tells you how unhinged from reality I am. I thought that in the modern era, playwriting may be my voice. But I'm loving what I'm doing now, and I'm learning from people because I'm getting to the point where I'm just not scared of people anymore. You know, I'm moving in that direction. You know, Christina's always saying that as long as we're scared of people, we're going to need the police. We're going to have to call some sort of outside force we sort of outsource this thing, this aspect of our humanity, just getting to know other people. And so, no, I mean, I'm out talking to people now, and I'm learning from them, and just having more trust. It's hard. It's hard not to think of things as, from a white perspective, so much privilege. It's hard when you hear someone, telling you what's happening to them. The word that's created in your head is complaining. You hear it's a complainant. They're lodging a complaint. It's complaining, and there's this white ear that you've got to dumb down and tune out so that you can actually hear what's happening. People are not complaining. They're trying to explain something to you. They're explaining, and I think it's just taken me years and years and years of kind of getting away from fear and this idea that I'm under attack, and learning to hear what explaining sounds like versus complaining.
Did I hear that correctly? You said, with the white ear, you said feeling like you're under attack? Is that what you said?
Yeah, the white condition is to know that you have something that is unearned, that was gained through the pain and suffering, and that is, this is a current state too, but I'm speaking in the past tense, that was gained through the pain and suffering and death and destruction of so many families and so many lives. And so you hoard, and you live in a state of denial, and it's a terrifying condition to live in. It's to come out of this and to start to sort of hear the things that I've said and things that I've thought, and really come to understand how absurd they are. It's much more freeing than being in sort of a general locked in whiteness, where you are apart and separate from the condition of other people, and you're kind of okay with that.
Fascinating. What are some of the, if you can share for our folks, non-white people who are listening in, what are some of the other aspects of this white ear that you're talking about? When you hear non-white people, what are some of the other things, at least that, even if you don't say them, what are some of the other things that you think go through your mind when you're listening from what you call the white ear? I think it would be most accurate to say that is the white supremacist ear, or the racist ear, when listening to non-white people.
All right, let me figure out how to present that. You got something? I'm going to let Christina explain the great power that she has over synthesis of ideas. I'm pretty good. I'm still so new with this material. I've just learned about the 13th Amendment. I'm just starting to learn about re-enslavement. These are all new concepts to me. So I'm kind of good at starting to analyze. She's helping me connect this to other struggles, whether it's food justice or educational justice, education reform, these kinds of things. So I'm realizing that there are places I've been in my life that I consider to be non-political spaces, and that's a real privilege to think of it that way. So I know I've been in situations where I shut down other people's ideas because I assume that they're going into a, quote, political sphere that I don't think has any relevance. And that's just simply because I have the privilege of interacting in that space in a depoliticized way because I'm the king. Because it's my rules. I'm the gold standard. So I don't have to acknowledge the role of agenda or politics or history in a space. So like in a school or in a gymnasium or in a library, I come from I come from positions of power just by virtue of my appearance. That when other people have spoken in ways that they were bearing witness to pain and suffering, I've actively shut that down, and I'm aware that I'm probably doing that now as my voice is dominating.
Fascinating. I'll see what Ms. Gonzalez had to say. I did want to point out for listeners, we just read Dr. Marimba Ani's Yurugu. For the folks who did the reading or listened to the study sessions that we had, one of the main points that she makes in that book is that one of the ways that white people practice racism is that they are constantly operating with a political agenda, maintenance, spread of white domination worldwide, while at the same time making it seem as though they're not being political and or opposing non-white people who come with their own political agenda to counter racism, white supremacy. That was one of the main points in her book. And I think that is fascinating what he just revealed about. I think he laid it out exactly what she's saying in the book. When non-white people come, I'm kind of paraphrasing and restating, but you can correct me if I am misinterpreting what you said. Being in a sphere as a white person, when non-white people come and they have quote-unquote complaints, or they have some sort of agenda where they want to address power, the power in the system of white supremacy, and trying to correct that, and saying, hey, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to be dealing with this. I set the standard. We're not supposed to be here for your political agenda of working against racism, white supremacy. Am I accurately restating what you said?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Very important. Ms. Gonzalez, I have never had the ability to check the white box. You said you, at least growing up, you were able to do so. Have you ever found yourself listening and feeling as though you were listening with that white ear?
I think that every white person is listening that way, some more so than others. I think we've all grown up that way, whether our parents told us that, whether we learned it in school, whether we were TV watchers, which I was when I was young, and it's told to us there. Everything that we do, we're looking at it through a racial lens. And I think that growing up mostly with my white mother, I had a tendency to do that. And even though, like, I went to a very mixed school, my neighborhood was mixed, my building was more white, but my neighborhood is very mixed. My family is very mixed. I think that being around your white family, you're going to hear things that you wouldn't hear elsewhere. And whether those things are, like, overt, or whether they're purposeful, or whether they're just something that you say or you feel and you don't even realize it. You pick that up. And I think that even I look at my mother, and like, she's a white woman, but she grew up in this same mixed neighborhood that I grew up in. In fact, most of her friends were black or Hispanic or like West Indian. She ends up having children with two immigrants. And I think she just has these things, these ideas in her head that she doesn't even realize. Like, when I try to speak with her about white privilege, like, my mother doesn't consider herself a privileged person. I mean, because, she didn't receive an inheritance when she was 18. She didn't have a house that was waiting for her. She did not go to college. She didn't have these so-called privileges that you think of when you think of, like, whiteness. And I think it's hard for her to see that just having that skin color that's the privilege, And I think that we've all been tricked, really, because from what I've been learning recently, I read this in Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, like how, in fact, the poor whites and the poor blacks were on the same side in this country against these rich white elites. And they were able to trick these poor white people into thinking that black people were the enemy. And, like, ever since that's happened, white people hate this other race. And sometimes they really don't even know why. And we know nothing about history, so we couldn't understand that. And I think that this is something that we have to overcome. Like, more than people wanting power, I think people don't want to give up their comfort. And in this world, if you're a white person, you're comfortable in a lot of ways, whether that's just being able to walk down the street or, you know, having some money coming to you when someone in your family passes away, like whatever that comfort is. And I guess people are just unwilling to give it up. And sometimes even when you see the way that you're seeing the world, or when you start to notice how you're hearing people, it's hard for you to really hear it because you don't want to give up that comfort. But I'm willing to give that up now. I know I have to.
Wow. Fascinating context of white supremacy. I want to get to the details about what you all have been doing with the Copwatch, what you've observed, and I know at least I've been observing. I'm in Washington State, so I'm pretty far from you all, but I've seen a lot of counter responses to things that you all are doing, recording enforcement officers where it looks like they're at least making an effort to pass laws and what have you to make that sort of thing illegal, where you can't record enforcement officers. So I want to get to some of the details on that. But one of our listeners, he felt that, Mr. Swaye, that you didn't answer the question. And as I said, this is super important, as much honesty as we can bear. Just, do you think, Miss Gonzalez, do you think she's a white person?
I know this sounds like some kind of white art of redirecting, but I really, I'm working very hard not to think of myself as a white person, and so that probably has an effect on how I'm seeing other people. No, I don't see, as I see myself and Stina struggling to kind of throw off the privilege that whiteness might afford us. Less and less, I see us as white people. If that makes any sense, and if that doesn't tread on someone's history or pain, if I may be permitted to say it, I'm looking to be less and less white with each passing day. And to be post-tribal in every way, to be the earthling that I need to be, so that we can discuss how we're going to deal with the major problems facing our species.
Wow. White people, they have a term for that. This white woman at the University of Washington, she's a grad student in anthropology. She told me the term is white speak. She said this is something that white people do consciously and or subconsciously. They will do this when they get in conversations on racism, when they don't want to answer a question or it gets tough, or they might have to reveal some of the ways that they participate in practicing racism. That was the term she gave me, white speak. I think we might have just heard some white speak right there. Wow. I will say... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Listen, if I'm in a hurry, I'm still at a point in my growing on this issue that if I'm in a hurry, I inadvertently and sometimes by choice invoke my whiteness and get where I need to be quicker, and that I may struggle with that the rest of my life, but I do plan to try and recognize it when I'm doing it and to try and stop it and try and make amends right there on the spot. That's what I'm focused on. The theory stuff you're right, I can talk it in a circle, but on this, what I'm trying to do is trying to really just be conscious of what I'm saying and doing, so as to recognize when that kind of trespass upon equality occurs, and I'm at fault.
Wow, that is fascinating. I'm in a hurry too. I'm in a hurry to try to solve this problem of racism, white supremacy. I really want to hit the fast forward button because we've been doing this a long time. We've been having this gripe for centuries with the practice of racism, white supremacy. One of the things that I think would help in hitting the fast forward button for us to be, everybody who says that they are about solving this problem, and I'm really talking to non-white people, to be as accurate as possible with regards to the use of words. And I don't use the term white privilege. I know we've had a lot of guests on the program who do. I don't use the term whiteness. I don't think those are the best terms. I just think it's a lot more accurate. It's a lot more efficient, and it makes the point a lot quicker. To just say, like Mr. Swaye, he just said, when I'm trying to get something done, I invoke my whiteness, and boom, keep it moving to get it done. And we can reflect on that later. I think it would be accurate. It would be efficient to just say, hey, I'm a white person. From time to time, I practice racism, white supremacy just to get things done. Bang, I'm white, I can do that. That's what the default is anyway. For a white person, you are expected to practice racism, white supremacy. I think it would just be effective. I think Dr. Barbara Trepanier, one of the best points that's ever been made on this program. She's a white woman, admitted racist. Her book, Silent Racism, and she said one of the major problems, major, bold-face print, one of the major problems with why we have not solved the problem of white supremacy is thinking that there are some white people who do not practice racism. Just that thought is keeping us from solving this problem. So I think we could all go quicker. White people not having any guilt or shame, trepidation about just saying, yes, I'm white and I practice racism. I'm a racist. That's just what it is. Non-white people, hey, that's just what it is. We're trying to solve the problem and just getting beyond where we're stunned about that, not being surprised about a white person practicing racism. I do want to highlight, though, for listeners, I still think Mr. Swaye, he didn't answer the question about whether Ms. Gonzalez is a white person or a non-white person. That's critical. I don't really have time to get into why that's so important, but that is very important. I still don't think he answered the question. He said, he might be invoking some of his privilege. I would say practicing racism, but he still didn't answer the question. But we do want to get to the Copwatch stuff because I think that's very important. And some of the listeners, they want to hear about that as well. At what point did you all make a decision? Hey, we're going to get our cameras. We're going to go outside. We're going to record what New York's finest, what they're doing in our neighborhoods, and what was the initial response when you did so?
Well, I think I know that people actually do Copwatch, like they get a crew of people together and someone films close up and someone's filming in the back. They've got this system that they've worked out for safety purposes. I think that's great. But I think Copwatch is best when you just are like going about your day and you see something and then you just film it because that's what should be done. And I guess we never really thought about it. In fact, I've been doing Copwatch even before this happened, maybe just a few years ago, and whether I was actually filming or I was observing a situation and then I would come over and ask questions or, speak to whoever was being harassed afterwards. I've been doing that for years now. So I guess never really thought about it. It's just like, hey, I've got my camera. This is something that someone should see. Okay, let's do it. And knowing now, because we had looked into it, this is something that you can do. We just started using that tool. But I guess before I didn't even know that I could film. And if a cop told me not to, I probably would have put my camera away. But I think this is something that you just do when it happens.
What sorts of things were you observing when you all first began going out with your camera and saying we're going to record this and create our own YouTube channel where we can upload the content? What sort of things were you capturing the enforcement officials doing?
So actually, the YouTube idea came afterwards. I had set up a YouTube page a few years ago just because, it pops up on your screen, it says fill it out, and I just made one. But I never had anything to put up, and I didn't really have the patience to wait for them to upload. But, I think we should be filming whenever we see cops. Just because they're always watching us, so they should know that we're watching them. And I think that waiting to film until after something happens, it's too late, and that if you do it beforehand, if you're filming the whole time, then you could be stopping a situation from happening. And I guess the funny thing about it is that, most of our videos don't even really involve stop and frisk. It's just police. Just general police harassment. I mean, intimidation. This is the police state that we live in, and, you know, we're filming whenever we see the cops doing something. So, I mean, we've got video. We were actually coming out of another community meeting, and we saw some young children being pulled off a bus. And we just started filming that. And we didn't really say anything to anyone that was there. And, you know, we held on to that video. And because they were children, I actually, you know, wasn't sure if we should even put something like that up. It wasn't until we had a few videos and we were like, you know what, this isn't something that we should just keep in our computers. People should see it. And since then, we just see interactions with police pretty much every time we walk out of the door. So.
Wow. For folks who want to call in, if y'all have questions, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you have questions. At what point did you realize, I think I saw Mr. Swaye when you all were giving your interview on RT, and you all were talking about the wanted posters, professional agitator posters that came up recently, that you felt within the last month or so that you had a suspicion that something was going on. What sorts of things were happening that gave you an inclination that enforcement officials might be responding to what you all were doing?
Well, I mean, I think we knew for a while. We're doing stuff that's quintessentially American. It's like it borders on street theater. We're doing things that they're like that. You know, in sort of a literate society, the references would be landing and people would be laughing. But the cops are kind of not hip to any of that and are kind of freaking out. So we were working. We had some restaurant work we were doing to get by about 2-3 months ago, and I'm even on my way to work. I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew the cops knew who I was, and that there were times I was being followed. We've had cops say to us, oh, it's a long walk home, long walk back to, and then they say, I'll say our street name or number. So we know that we're known. We were just arrested outside the Bronx courthouse. They said I was speaking too loudly and using prohibited language. I think I have 5 arrests around this issue, and Christina's looking at 9, and they've all been politicized in that way, where things have been instigated, where there are false charges. We've known for a while that we're being, I think probably since the beginning of Occupy, that we're being watched. We see the same cops follow us from event to event, from place to place. Whenever we're in court, there's the same officers sort of hounding us. They've got a special Occupy patrol that they're sicking on people like us.
Yeah, I mean, I put a while back, I believe it was in February, I had an interaction with a cop on a train platform, and there was actually nothing going on. I was taking pictures, and then they began to film me, and we had a very rude experience. I mean, they pushed me out of the way on the train. They called me dirty, just very disrespectful. And when I put that video up on my page, it wasn't but a few hours later that they made a YouTube page and added their video. And this was back in February. So it's clear that they knew I had a YouTube page. They were watching it daily. I mean, to know that I put that video up. So I knew from back then. I mean, we've been walking in the streets, and, I'd be like, Matt, that cop was just looking at us, like, through his side view mirror. I see him. Like, you're just paranoid. I mean, as unlucky as I feel now, like, oh my gosh, we have this poster, people think, like, oh, you better be careful. I feel like we're lucky because I wonder how many flyers they have up of other people that are doing radical things. And at least now, I feel like I don't feel paranoid anymore. I feel like my brain can rest knowing that, okay, yes, they have been watching us. Everybody else still has to wonder.
Things, but a lot of little things we have a hyper-awareness of that's very, very edifying, very, very educational. In this moment, too, there's a lot of learning happening. You start to understand what police terror means.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, we had a silent march on Father's Day out here. It was huge. About 50,000 people showed up. And towards the end of it, many people were done with being silent. And we chanted and we held our signs up. And, you know, we were just blocks from Mayor Bloomberg's house. And, you know, the police were not going to let us march to his house. And they proceeded to push us back and, you know, wanted us on the sidewalk. And, you know, we were firm. You know, I explained to them, like, it's not important that we get on the sidewalk, but it is important that you stop harassing people. That's the important part here. That's what we're here for today. And they just didn't want to hear it. And at the end of that day, my 22-year-old sister, who doesn't come to any of these political things, who knows about what I'm doing and supports me, but she works hard and, you know, she's living her life. Well, at the end of that day, she ended up being brutally assaulted by cops. She had her glasses ripped off of her face. She had scratches. She was thrown down to the floor. Her hair was pulled. She was dragged away from me. They pulled her down the street with her breasts exposed. They were in the back of a police car, handcuffed her, drove her around the block, and told her, get out of here and don't go back. And it was right after that I was then assaulted by cops and arrested and sent to central bookings, and now I'm being charged with assault. And at that time, everything was confusing. I didn't know if they confused my sister with me or, you know, like, what brought on that attack. And then less than 2 weeks later, we find this poster. So I think things are becoming more clear. You can see the escalation that has taken place throughout this thing.
I saw the video from the protest on Father's Day last month. You all can check that out on their YouTube page. It's Christina 91686. Again, it's Christina 91686. You can check out that and some of the other footage that they've been shooting in the NYC area. Also, no coincidences, same day that Rodney King passed away under suspicious circumstances, in my opinion. Wow. Okay. I do see some folks that dialed in, but I just to kind of get out it was kind of happenstance the way that you all even found out about the existence of this wanted poster with your mugshots and everything, labeling you professional agitators. You all just went to a community meeting at the 30th precinct and just stumbled on these pictures. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a mere coincidence. Thursday nights are actually the night where there's usually a vigil held for Ramarley Graham, who was 18 years old and murdered by NYPD in the Bronx in his home. So usually we're doing that on Thursday evening, but a friend told us about the meeting. She's also in our area, and she said if either of us would like to go. We were like, of course, you know, we'll check it out. So, you know, walking in there and seeing it, it was, you know, I was in disbelief. I was in disbelief because that's not something that you expect to walk in and see, you know. If anything, I would have expected someone else to see it somewhere eventually and bring it to me. But to see that as I'm sitting there and hearing conversations going on in this room, yeah, it was quite shocking.
Did the enforcement officers at the precinct, did they provide any explanation with regards to why that image was posted? Who put it up? Is that even legal? Did you get any explanation?
Well, there's actually a name of an officer on the bottom of the poster with his cell phone number on it. He's from the intelligence division of the precinct. When I walked into the precinct, I felt people looking at me weird. But again, this is something that was happening to us regularly. So, you know, I didn't think twice about it, really. And then when I saw the poster, it was then that Matt said something and introduced himself to the room. And then I proceeded to say something. And basically we were told, like, it wasn't the time or place to be discussing it, and that we should really just get on to the business of the meeting. And, you know, it was then that we left. I actually asked an officer, a sergeant there, if he could give me a copy of the flyer. He told me that he couldn't. I called the precinct later. They said that they removed it, that we couldn't get a copy of it, that there were no others around, but that's all that they could tell us. So.
Yeah, well, one of the really kind of nice things about the work that we're doing, you know, being so thoroughly unemployed and having time on our hands to walk about, we're getting to know some of the elders of my neighborhood. I never really had much occasion to talk to. I didn't think I did, at least. And in that meeting, one of the elders on our street got up and spoke in our defense, on our behalf, and said that we weren't agitators, that we were, just your everyday protesters and good citizens and this, that, and the other. So I felt like we got the support from the only woman I knew in the meeting happened to be her, and she was able to support us. Kind of lovely, because it didn't feel like we were going to have much support in that room.
No, and the feelings were very mixed in that room. We had some middle-aged white gentlemen, perhaps a couple. They were very upset and walked out of the room. We had some people telling us to be quiet, and some people kind of smiling and nodding their heads and backing us up. So it was a very strange feeling in the room that evening.
And then, horrifying. We have mugshots of us. These were photos taken for nonviolent civil disobedience in defense of, like, the voiceless. And the photos they have, there's nothing on that flyer that would lead anyone to believe anything other than that we were just, crazy and violent and to be ignored at all costs, which is, not how we like to see ourselves.
Standard operating procedure. Wow. Context of white supremacy. I will see if a few of our listeners, if they have questions they would like to ask. I know folks are interested in your activities with the enforcement officers. I guess I'll ask real quick. This should be a quickie. Important but quick. Do you think it would be possible for a white person to do all of the work that you all have been doing and still be a racist white supremacist?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Gonzalez?
I think that these are deep feelings within us that sometimes we don't even realize that are there. And I think it takes a lifetime to get rid of those feelings. So what we're doing right now is like, it's an exercise towards getting closer and closer to not having these racist feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's times where I've never felt more racist in my life than when I'm in the when I'm in the street doing something like outreach or speaking to people. There are times when the most awful things come to my head now because of this interaction. This is like a public exorcism that we're trying to perform. I think that's part of it. I think it's coming out of me like a toxin. I can feel it at times.
Wow. Have you felt any of that toxin coming up during the interview? Either of you?
During the say again, I'm sorry?
I said, have either of you felt any of that racist toxin coming up during this interview this evening?
That I can say I haven't, but I think it's there with us all the time. That's what I mean. I feel like it's just here. It's in my room right now, and it's in your room where you are, and it almost feels inescapable to me. But any overt racist feelings, no, I can't say that has happened in this past hour or so.
Mr. Swaye?
I don't think it's possible for a white person to talk about race without guilt and shame coming into play in ways that are not productive for like a free flow of ideas. So I think racism is that thing that doesn't let ideas flow freely, and I didn't know, I couldn't give you a good logical sentence about slavery up until half a year ago. I'm a 35-year-old guy. It's unthinkable, So to confront race in any way puts images in my head that are probably not conducive to a free flowing and honest conversation. I think that's the struggle.
Fascinating. I will check in, see if the listeners have any questions. Again, the number is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press star 6 if you're on that line and you have a question. If you're on the talk shoe line, star 8. Person who dialed in 3030, last 4 digits 3030. Did you have a question for Ms. Gonzalez or Mr. Swaye? Caller, last 4 digits 3030. Did you have a question, or are you just listening?
No. Hey, good evening. Thank you for letting me join you. I guess I come at this from a kind of unique perspective. I've been enjoying the conversation, I'll tell you that much. But here's the thing. I'm a white man. I'm almost 50 years old, and I was raised by black folks in the South when I grew up down there. And both my parents, my mom wasn't with my father, my birth father, but my mom moved down to Mississippi to work in the civil rights. And I stayed with black folks my whole childhood. I don't think I saw another white person that wasn't in a sheet or my mother until I was about, I'd say 6 years old. And hearing you all talk tonight about this situation, listening to this young lady and this young man, I want to say how proud I am of you on your journey to try to get to an understanding of your whiteness and your and an honest appraisal of your racism, your built-in racism. But I would also caution you not to let the resentment of who you are overtake that thought process. In other words, that resentment can cause you some degree of anger, and we know what anger leads to. And I don't think that's not the place I come from. I think you can recognize, if you've ever left your own backyard, that supremacy exists on this planet, not just among white people, but among people of all races. And I'll just give you one example. In Northern Ireland, there's white folks that hate each other over religion.
Oh, hang on a second, sir. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Did you have a question? That's number one.
Yeah, I'm getting to it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm going to have to step up a little bit. My program is not intended for white people. I know white people listen, but my program, I'm not really looking for white people. I've concluded that white people are not going to stop practicing racism. I was cool until you went with the making comments suggesting that there are non-white people who are racist, and I just cannot allow that to go down. I have concluded.
Not what I said, sir.
Hang on a second. Hang on what I said. If you listen to what I have a mute button. I'm hosting. I have a mute button. What you said was the supremacy exists all over the planet, and if you go to Northern Ireland, there are white people fighting with other white people. I've already heard this sort of commentary before when white people, racist suspects, go down the road of suggesting that there are non-white people who are racist. I've already heard that. I do not believe that that is accurate, and I have never heard anyone, white or non-white, give me any evidence of non-white people being able to practice racism. So I'm not really going to give time, if you just want to give your soliloquy to talk about white people in Northern Ireland fighting against other white people. White people do that all the time. battle with other white people. That's not news. At the end of the day, those little disputes and tiffs, that does nothing to disrupt the global enterprise of white supremacy. I will perhaps come back to you and get to your question after I get to the other folks, but I will reiterate, this program is designed for non-white people. I know white people listen. We have white people on the program regularly, but it's designed for non-white people. So I'll get to your question after the non-white folks get their question. If you have, commentary, speech, you want to talk about, what your parents did in the civil rights movement, if we have time and I'm interested, maybe we'll hear that, maybe not. The person who dialed in, last 4 digits 5301, did you have a question for our guests?
Good evening. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for taking the call. I didn't hear the early portion of the show. I got into the show maybe about 30 minutes into it. Of the guests, particularly of the male guests, did you say that you are a white male or function as a white male?
Yeah, I mean, I come from Jewish parents, but I'm born in the late '70s, so by that time, I think whiteness and Ashkenazi Jews of European descent in the diaspora in the United States had already reached some sort of a status of whiteness that wasn't, not in all cases, but in the context of African Americans, that whiteness was already secured by the time I was born. So yeah, I think I do function. Particularly, I'm not talking with my hands. I can get away with a little bit more of a waspy kind of thing. But yeah, I'm certainly functioning as a white person.
Okay, and for the female guests, would you say that you function as or are accepted as a white female?
That's not how I consider myself. I mean, this has always been a tricky question for me. Like, I never did really know the answer to that. I mean, my mother is white, and my father is Hispanic, and my grandfather didn't teach his parents how to speak Spanish. So I would say, like, I'm very American, but I don't really know if I pass as a white person, or if I feel like a white person, or if I'm accepted as a white person. Like, I'm always very, very torn with this question.
So would you say that most people who see you would say that you would be racially ambiguous?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, I get called mixed. That's what I get called, or mutt. Like that's how people refer to me as. And seriously, it depends on where I'm at, what I'm wearing, how I'm speaking, what I'm talking about. It depends on all of that, whether someone perceives me to be white or not. Yeah.
Okay, now for both of you, so as a result of you functioning as a white male and a white female, or appearing to be racially ambiguous, as the female caller has stated, do you think that this provides you a shield, if you will, to enable you to go about doing the work that you do that would not be a shield that other non-white people would have?
I think to be like a race traitor is probably the worst thing. You might get hated more for that. I think that when we look in history, we see that there were plenty of white people who died fighting for the rights of any other non-white person. I think that we're seeing less discussion now during the Occupy movement. And I think that maybe in the moment of something happening, someone's automatic reaction is not the same reaction that they would have with a young black male, for instance. But in the end, like, we're fighting for justice, and I don't really think it matters what color you are. If you're doing something good, if you're doing something righteous, it seems like you're a target.
Yeah, certainly, I've succeeded in making a target of myself when I otherwise could have glided. Is it glid or glided? Glided. we're in court supporting families all the time of young men from the Bronx who are trying to film the police. NYCLU has just put out this app, and so there's been some publicity around these rights, and people are practicing these rights and getting smacked down and abused and arrested and in the whole bit. And so I know that I've got special privileges. I'm able to do things. I'm able to assert rights. Well, I actually have the rights. It's New York City. I still have pretty much a First Amendment, pretty much a Fourth Amendment, and pretty much a Second Amendment, and that's not something that I think a young black or brown man could really honestly say in this city at this point.
Okay, now my final question for either or both of you. Do you ultimately believe that the ultimate end result of your activity will result in either of you or both of you being physically harmed, even on to possibly leading to death?
I think, physical harm has already happened to me and now to my loved one. So my sister was assaulted, and it's scary to think that it would end in death. But again, we look at history and we see some people died for doing what they believed in and for putting themselves in harm's way, and for making themselves just as vulnerable as pretty much everyone else out there. And yeah, I think that it's definitely possible. How probable? I don't know. I didn't think I was that big of a deal, but then again, they put our face on a poster, so apparently what we're doing is the right thing. I mean, I can hope that it would never get to that level. I'm peaceful, and I believe that the only way that we're going to accomplish our goals is through peace. So I would never want to experience any type of physical harm like that. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not likely that either Stina and myself are going to be able to kind of pack it in and just lead like a private life again. And so I think it's likely that there's going to be some kind of an attempt. There's a lot of law enforcement here on the ground. There's undercovers. There's private security firms, mercenaries. There's a lot of layers in this thing, from the federal, the state level, the city level, and then, like I said, these private firms that have immunity. And there's a lot of people deeply invested in the system remaining forever, and they still think that's a possibility. They still think they can continue to wring out the rest of humanity and take it all. So I think it's likely we're going to encounter some difficulties. What we're trying to do is to get to know everybody around us, and to try and be good listeners. I think that's pretty much all we got. It doesn't look like institutions are going to come to our defense. It's going to probably be people, which is how we want it anyway.
Okay, this is my final question, and I'll let someone else go. So something that the two of you have said resonated with me about you talking about there have been other white identified persons who have made sacrifices on behalf of non-white people. Do either of you fashion yourself as modern day John Browns, and if so, why? And if not, why not?
I mean, I'm honored to be compared to certain people in history, who have been martyrs or who have done amazingly brave things. I wouldn't necessarily compare myself with anyone, although it's been happening a lot lately. But I think what we're doing now is pretty original in some of its ways. I mean, we're at a point in history where the web is doing amazing things for people. So I don't know. I would say it's difficult. I wouldn't compare myself to anyone.
I think we're doing abolitionist work. I mean, the goal is to get people to rethink prison and I think as people continue to use, we talk about prisons more and more, and people understand that the language it's the language of slavery, and so some of the slavery denial begins to break down through that. I think we are abolitionists. I don't think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think we got 4% of the world's population, 25% of the world's prisoners. We're talking about freedom, and incarceration is what we're out there speaking of. And then just kind of the mental slaveries that define and reinforce the whole system of physical slavery. It's abolitionist work. I don't know much about history. They didn't teach me much on this stuff, so I don't know who I'd be compared to, but I suspect that it's a more apt comparison is I'm probably more like the hundreds of thousands of Canadian students marching in the streets against tuition hikes. I mean, I think that the comparisons can be more modern even than they are historical.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, S. Dot. Before we go to our caller, that stuck with me too, Miss Gonzalez. You said that there have been plenty of white people who have sacrificed themselves for non-white people who died. I believe you said who sacrificed their lives for non-white people. Other than John Brown, since you said plenty, could you name 10 white people who have died fighting against racism, white supremacy?
Well, I don't know if I specifically said died, but I mean putting yourself in harm's way or giving up, the comforts that are afforded to you just by being born a certain skin color. And I wish that I could name 10 people. I actually can't. I probably can't name 10 black people who have risked their lives for the rights of others, because I wasn't really taught those things. Like, I'm learning them now, and I'm flooding my brain now with names and places and, historic events. And I wish that I was taught these things so I could teach them more efficiently. But no, I can't name 10 people.
Oh, okay. It's in the archives, but I'd be willing to bet some money that you said white people, plenty of white people who've given their lives. If I'm incorrect, please check me. Any of the listeners, anyone who called in, just Gus, you're wrong. She didn't say that. You can check me, but I'm pretty certain that you said that there have been plenty of white people who have given their lives for non-white people. I might be paraphrasing it a bit, but you said give their lives, I think, unless I'm incorrect, which I could be. I definitely could not name 10 white people. I think if I was under threat of death, I would have a hard time naming even 5 white people who have given their lives for non-white people fighting against racism, white supremacy. Mr. Swaye, can you name 10 white people who've given their lives? And if she didn't say that, you can express that as well. Set me straight.
No, I certainly can't name 10, let alone, I can't speak of the labor movement. I can't speak of the various different women's movements. I can't speak of the global AIDS crisis. The number of subjects where I'm completely ignorant is stunning. I have 2 Ivy League degrees, and I know that I turn the tap and the water comes out, and that's pretty much the extent of what I've gotten from these great corporate institutions. I don't know anything about people who have dedicated their lives, purposefully put themselves into a struggle that would not seem to be theirs. I don't have any. No one would have taught me that, because that's not. I was supposed to be a chiropractor. That's not what I was supposed to be. Teaching a inquisitive person like myself about those people probably would have caused me to ask questions that weren't going to be answered within a classroom setting. So no, I wasn't taught any of the history of whether there were whites who have stepped forward in ways that were useful to others.
You know what? I think that's probably what scares me the most, is like how many people really did give up so much, and now they're not even known. So if if something happens to Matt and I, unfortunately, people won't be able to name our names, and that's the reality of it. And I guess I'm not saying that some white guy jumped in front of the bullet of, while it was coming towards another black man. I don't mean that by like giving your life. I mean just giving up these comforts that we have for another person. And I want to stop and frisk, and I want to stop mass incarceration, and I want racial equality. But it's more than that for me. Like if I would be compared to someone, maybe Vandana Shiva, right? Who's fighting for food justice and environmental justice. Like, I'm fighting for so many other things right now that I'm working on putting it past. I want to stop looking at things through a racial lens. I know it's impossible to do that right now, but I think that's what we need to start working towards. And in fact, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Lawrence, because I know I say this a lot, and the other gentleman who came on and wanted to ask about, or he mentioned that even non-whites are racist. So you don't believe that non-whites can be racist? Because that's something that I say often, that in fact we're all raised to be racist, and I don't think everyone benefits off those racist beliefs. But I would consider it racist, when you're taught not to love yourself because of the way you look, or the way your hair looks, or because of where you live, or the way that you speak. Like, I think that we're all looking at life through a racial lens. That's how we were taught. Do you disagree with that?
What's your definition of racism or racist? What's your definition of racist? Oh, wait a minute. Do you have a working definition of racist, like that you use on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Your definition of racist and white supremacy are the same, and so no, that's not the exact definition I'm talking about. But I mean that we have these stereotypes and we have prejudices that we show towards each other and towards ourselves, and I hear racist comments all day, coming from all types of people. And now whether it's like retaliatory or it's something ingrained, like I'm just hearing it all day. I remember being a child and just hearing a lot about race. It was always about race. And I guess I want to say we're not all racist. Maybe I should change it and say we're all looking through this racial lens, where we judge each other on these superficial characteristics,
My view is what you call all of us looking through a racial lens that doesn't really get to what we're talking about. If you all are talking about wanting to stop and frisk, if you're talking about wanting to stop mass incarceration of non-white people, that is talking about changing a white supremacist power dynamic. When we're talking about racism, white supremacy, we're talking about a system of power that white people have put in place worldwide to dominate non-white people. If that's what we're talking about, then we should use terms that accurately reflect that. And I don't think that it accurately reflects the world in which we live to just say that everybody is racist. Non-white people have been infected with white supremacist thinking, logic, and that is very unfortunate. Many non-white people, myself included, say and do things that are a part of the white supremacist programming that is ubiquitous. You cannot go anywhere without seeing it. The images, television programs, it's all over the place. So you have a lot of non-white people who are responding to racism, white supremacy. That does not make them racist. And I have had many non-white people who are confused about that. We'll have someone coming on the program next week from Japan who's written a book, Black Male, where he says that he's racist. And I think that works to help support the system of white supremacy. It erodes what it means to be a racist. When a white person gets labeled a racist, the immediate response from many non-white people who are confused is, well, yeah, we're all a little racist. In fact, I heard that at the white privilege conference where you had non-white people saying, yeah, well, we're all a little racist. And that's not true at all. What we have is a system where white people are practicing racism, white supremacy. Non-white people are victims of that and responding to it. And I think when we had a caller, she dialed in a few weeks ago and she had that same question. She said, well, you don't think non-white people can be racist? In fact, her daughter was telling her it's not possible for non-white people to be racist. And she was challenging and saying, oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I asked her, I said, well, can you think of a way that a non-white person practices racism against white people? And she could not. And I said, don't you think that's interesting? You had to challenge your daughter and say that, oh, no, you can't just say that you got to be white to be racist. There's some non-white people that are racist too, but you can't think of any examples. And she said that is interesting. And I've seen that over and over again. So that's my view on it. If we were on the formal plantation, since we're using slavery analogies, if we were on the formal plantation, regardless of what the slaves are doing, I think it would be pretty obvious the power dynamic. The slaves are not racist. Whatever they're doing, they're responding to having a lack of power as a result of being slaves. Racism, white supremacy. I think it would be very clear, and I think this is just a different, more refined form of slavery. The plantation has been expanded, refined a little bit. That's my view. I could be incorrect. I hope that made sense.
Yeah. And so that's what you would call, or that would be the response of, let's say, black men or women who, decide to put on the suit and tie and mingle with white people and perhaps say racist things towards other black people, or have these feelings, right? Or let's say these corrections officer or police officers that happen to be black or Hispanic, and they clearly are beating on people who look just like them. That's their response to not having this power, right?
I would say, do we have a system of white supremacy? If we do, then whatever that non-white person is doing, the most powerful white people are allowing it to happen, whether that's President Obama and the drone strikes, whether that's a black person as a corrections officer. I would say white people can show you better than I can tell you who has the power on the planet. Now, I have seen way too many examples. If you want to talk about a black enforcement officer, a black police officer, or non-white police officer who's going out and they're doing the stop and frisks. A lot of these non-white people that are being stopped and arrested, oftentimes it is a non-white person. Absolutely correct. However, folks, I would just point to Norm Stamper's book. You heard a sound clip when he was on the program a couple years ago. Norm Stamper's book, Breaking Rank. Or you can get the book, The Fence, about the situation that happened in Boston. Black enforcement officer out with his white co-workers. They saw him. They got a little bit confused and didn't see his shield, and they thought he was just another nigger. And they proceeded to beat him unconscious. Left him on the ground bleeding before they realized, whoops, one of ours. Sorry about that. Thought you were just one of those other niggers out there. Norm Stamper's Breaking Rank, where he had a chapter talking about an enforcement officer who said, I'm around racist police officers all day long, and they're telling racist jokes, and they're mistreating black people, and I have to laugh and go along. He said this was a quote-unquote grown black male reduced to tears in his office doing an investigation of the San Diego Police Department. Norm Stamper, former chief of police, white man, former chief in Seattle, Washington, in his book, Breaking Rank. That power dynamic is still in effect. You might have some black people who are doing things, saying things to get a little bit better treatment on the plantation, which is to be expected. Logical behavior. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's, or I'll say this, I understand, even though it can be frustrating, it can be upsetting, I certainly understand. I certainly understand why a non-white person would take that position under the system of white supremacy. Does that make them a racist? Absolutely not, because they do not have power on the plantation. White people can sit them down, throw them back out immediately, and there are too many examples to name of that happening. And either that's true or not. I could be wrong, but either what I just laid out, either it's logical and it's accurate, or it's not.
Yeah, I'm with you. Prejudice plus power. The issue of guns and race is one that's new to me, and how gun laws have been shaped around the history of slavery is new to me. And it is weird to be coming to this knowledge at a time when there's I think it's a majority of officers on the beat are black and brown. And so I don't know what this means for the way the power is going to shift as demographics and population shifts occur. But I know that, you know, more than I'm looking at race of officers or anything like that at this point. I'm looking at people coming back from wars overseas with PTSD that are given badges and guns rather quickly by the NYPD. I'm looking at officers who don't seem to live in the neighborhoods they police, and they have a real knowledge of that post Giuliani, now we can do whatever we want kind of approach to policing. And so, as a white man, my preoccupation with the police now, it's taken a new turn now that I know for certain that I'm under attack. The way I look at a police officer's race and try and do that kind of mental calculus to find out what that might mean or what I might be able to get away with, as someone trying to instigate conversation in public. These issues, it's all muddied up for me because it's not a white man talking to a black man or a white man talking to a white man or a man talking to a man. It's an armed man talking to an unarmed man, and I'm the unarmed man. So it's a lot for me to think about out there as I'm trying to keep myself safe and do things that keep my partner safe. Race and race and guns. This is a new one for me to take on. I'm looking forward to seeing what learning comes out of it for me.
I want to snag our other caller, Minnie B. I would just tell anyone if you're confused, if things get muddied up when you start seeing black enforcement officers, come back to me when you start getting reports of black enforcement officers going to white neighborhoods and mistakenly shooting white people that they thought had a gun or a butter knife or adjusting their zipper in a suspicious manner. Come back to me and have the dialogue about racist non-white people, racist enforcement officers, when that starts to happen in prolific numbers. Once every 40 hours, a white man or a white woman or a white child has been shot and killed by an armed non-white enforcement officers, and then maybe I'll reconsider. Minnie B, did you have a question for our guests, Mr. Swaye, Miss Gonzalez?
Shooby-doo, Gus.
Shooby-doo.
Hello, Miss Gonzalez and Mr. Swaye. I'm a little confused about what it is that you are attempting to do with videotaping these stop and frisk, and what are some of the outcomes that you wish to achieve through your activity?
So I said before, I want the police to know that we're watching them. They're watching us all day. We have cameras everywhere. We have cops everywhere. They sit in their cars and they spy on us, and I want them to know that while they're working, while they're performing their duties, that we're watching their every move as well. I have plenty of stuff that doesn't go onto my site. I don't know, it's great for people to see it, but I feel like the effect that it has on officers at that moment is way more profound. Sometimes I'm not even really recording. My phone may be dead, and I still have it up as though I am recording because I know that they act differently when they're being watched and when they're not. And I feel like the effect that I want that to have is that every police officer should know that they're being watched by citizens at all times. and that obviously is not going to change the racist mentality of many of the officers, or the fact that the entire, police department, or the idea of policing is racist. But I think that it will change the way that these officers behave in our neighborhoods, and the way that people.
And sorry, excuse me.
Oh no, I'm done.
How many of these stop and frisk have you witnessed and recorded?
Dozens. We've seen dozens. We've seen cars being pulled over. We've seen people being questioned inside of the train station. We've seen people questioned on the street, in a store, on the beach, on the bus. I mean, anywhere you can think of, it's happening. In the courthouses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's constant. And, I mean, I'm filming all the time, whether it's someone who's being questioned as white or black or Hispanic, young or old, whether the officers are white or black, whether I think it's just someone being harassed or police are actually, investigating someone's call. I'm filming all the time.
What's the ratio of non-white people being stopped and frisked compared to white people in your observations?
I mean, I said I've got dozens of videos. I know definitely one is a case of white people being stopped. I can't remember if there's another one. I don't think so.
In my entire life, I can't remember ever seeing a white guy up against the wall being frisked in my entire life.
And I have heard of this happening, but it's usually, I have a friend who is half white. He has white skin, but he lives in the projects. He lives in a neighborhood that's mostly black. So, and he wears a fitted hat and baggy jeans. So that's why he's being stopped. But if it weren't for that, we don't walk downtown Manhattan and see a white man being stopped, or a couple, wearing khakis being stopped. That's obviously not going to happen. Even when they're doing something that a young black man would be stopped for, even when.
And how many? Have you been interviewed by any of the so-called popular news programs, or how many interviews have the two of you been doing?
Our YouTube presence is, there's video available of us at a variety of different rallies and marches, protests, offering. In many cases, someone just puts a mic in your face and wants to know why you're here, and what you hope to accomplish with this, and what are some of the larger issues. We've done interviews for RT, and it doesn't seem like the mechanism by which Americans get news. It doesn't lend itself to the kind of reporting that would, on the one hand, want to shed light on the things we're speaking about, and then also it can't. We have press conferences all the time where reporters are facing the wrong way. They're taping knowing that their editor is not going to be able to use this. Christina and I were talking the other night about how ABC essentially shows the same 3 stops and frisks, and it's been using those same clips for years. And NBC, although 2,000 of these happen a day on the books officially, it's the same clips they're showing. And so there's not an interest on the part of the white establishment to discuss its overt racism and the implications that that's having on Black America. And it's not even on the human level. It's not good reporter, bad reporter, just like it's not good cop, bad cop. These institutions are just rotten to the core.
Yeah, put it this way. Our police commissioner's son, Greg Kelly, delivers the news for Fox 5. They obviously didn't come to us to know the story. And in fact, Greg Kelly has been accused of rape, So, these people don't want to hear what we may have to say. So, I mean, the media twists everything anyway, so I prefer to be having a real conversation like this than to have my words taken out of context, and wait for someone to misconstrue.
Mr. Swaye, I've gotten a sense from listening to you that you're not entirely comfortable, fluid, or admittedly well-versed in talking about racism, white domination. Is that correct?
That I'm not comfortable thinking about thinking and talking about racism and white domination. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's not comfortable. It's it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable to know that there are things that I still believe I've achieved that, when I look at them closely, have actually been handed to me, which is the opposite. I mean, what I think this kind of white supremacy has done for my brain is it's given me the opposite meaning for so many words, whole word sets and word families. I've come to understand the opposite meaning. So even my sense of, as I investigate this stuff, obviously my sense of self is in flux, and sometimes that's pleasurable, and other times it's painful. But I've got to look at where, if we want to have children, what kind of a place do we want? We want to have a place where words actually mean what they mean, and when someone says hello, it's not them actually lobbing a racial epithet. So I've got to. It's uncomfortable. It's deeply uncomfortable. There's a lot of hemming and hawing that I do around it. And what I say at 10:30 in the morning, I often feel is moronic by 2, and I've reclaimed it by 8 p.m. That's just the natural cycle of my day. With this subject matter, with this subject matter, it's a pretty good roller coaster.
You both have been arrested. I guess, Ms. Gonzalez, you've been arrested 9 times. Is that correct?
I'm beginning to lose count, but yeah, I think it's 9 times.
And when you are arrested, are you just released on your own recognizance, or do you have to bond out, or I'm not even sure the correct language. What is the process for you being released from greater confinement?
Yeah, so I've been arrested and released just several hours later right out of the precinct with a ticket. I have been arrested and sent to central bookings and gone through the system and then been released on my own recognizance. I've also gone through central bookings and had bail set on me and sent to Rikers Island. I have also been arrested in a courtroom where I was held in contempt of court and sentenced to 10 days by the judge immediately, where I completely skipped the central bookings process and gone straight to Rikers Island and served a 10-day sentence. So it's been very different all of these times.
And how much has this cost you financially?
I was going to say, it's cost me so much. It's cost me, relationships with certain people and time with my family and at certain times my sanity. Financially, I lost my job when I was sent to Rikers Island. Who knows if I'm going to be looking for a job now, what kind of Google search they're going to do on me and they prefer me not working for them. I've put money into materials that we've used and cameras, and we have several fines to pay now, and I'm sure we have more coming. So it's been a great cost to us, but it feels all worth it.
And Mr. Swaye, you've been arrested 4 times. Is that correct?
I think I have 5. 3 of those were in traditional civil disobedience, and then 2 of them were not.
And where do you get what are the resources available to you when you're arrested to be released? Have you ever been sent to Rikers?
No. So that gives you a good idea of, we're talking about privilege. I don't know. The NYPD and the court officers seem to prefer to attack women on the one hand, but we've been talking about whiteness and how we're perceived. I think it can be chalked up to nothing else. That I've been arrested less frequently. Christina is bold and courageous in ways that and speaking truth to power that I'm not yet. So I think that would account for a couple of her arrests. But no, I haven't. I was in central booking in Queens, and apart from that, I haven't made the journey to Rikers yet. But I'm looking at some of the targeting they're doing of other folks in Harlem who are filming the police, and I think it's likely that I'm trying to mentally prepare myself for that. I think it's likely that we'll be inside for some portion of the coming school year, as it were.
And financially, how will you survive that?
Well, we're trying to be minimalist. We have something of a network of people that love us and look out for us and are able to just exchange goods and services and help us get by. It's not a sustainable model. It's not. It won't. We're going to be handing resumes out within, I think maybe within a couple months. We're looking to try and figure out. It's not just how are we going to get work. It's we're spending our lives right now full time out and about supporting activists in any way activists and citizens in any way that we can. And so to go back into a setting where we're not free the constraints of any kind of a workspace are going to be difficult for us to fit back into, given some of what we've experienced. And that too is really revealing to me. I was a 7th grade teacher, so I think of how my students were. I have no idea how they were able to concentrate on any given day with what they endured on just their walk to school from authority. It's amazing to me that anybody's able to function and just perform basic duties in an environment where the police are so like thoroughly hell-bent on profiting from other people's pain.
And my last question, if I'm permitted to ask one more to both of you, is are you doing this? Is your activism about simply stopping the activity of stop and frisk of citizens, or are you fighting a larger system, and what is that system?
Stop and frisk is just a name that they've, given this policy that's actually been going on a long time and, has many other names throughout history. So just to stop this policy would be, I wouldn't call that a victory. We're trying to stop bigger things here. Money has taken over. We don't have connections with the earth anymore. We don't know how to make anything ourselves. We don't speak to each other anymore. We don't have respect for each other, for women, for children. Our school systems are atrocious. We have to get over these things in order to look at the bigger picture of things, I think. So, there's a larger picture, and I think that what we're doing is getting people talking. This conversation right here is happening, so I think people are having conversations that they wouldn't have had otherwise. That's important to me.
And we're still not able to, in New York City, we're still not able to, ideally if we had some concerns about the environment or our food distribution system or healthcare, we'd be able to get together in the streets and have this discussion. But if a group congregates in Manhattan and they're not involved in commerce or consumption, they're simply discussing ideas and in kind of progressive and dynamic ways, it's quite likely that summonses are going to be written for failure to disperse or for any number of other kinds of trespass. It's it's obscene what they're slapping on people for having, adult conversations. So we figure with all that we're trying to look at and discuss and learn about, we're not going to be able to have those very important conversations until the police allow us to congregate. And I don't know about I don't know about pre 9/11, but I've just lived in the city after 9/11. But you can't congregate now. There's no public space. There's no shared space. Everything has been privatized, and they're looking to have you out there talking about people, places, and things. They want you buying stuff, ideas. There's no place for ideas in the public sphere, and the police are there to enforce that. So we got to knock out this police problem, and soon, if we're going to come to some kind of a peaceful resolution on climate and a whole host of other issues, that we're looking at it like. And the question I think we're posing to ourselves is if there was no New York City Police Department in 200 days, what would we like to do? What would we do now to ensure safety on day one of a post-NYPD city? So that's the kind of thought experiment we're engaged in, to try and figure out what we would do to create community safety and security in the absence of the NYPD, because until we have those answers, we're still subject to this tyranny.
Thank you. I'll let someone else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Minnie B. The white man, racist suspect, who had his soliloquy. If you have a question you would like to ask, I'm still doing my mute button, and I'm just not into having white people dial in. We've had white people dial in before, but I'm just not into having white people come on and talk and do a lot of extra hemming and hawing around issues. If you have a question, if you can get to that. If not, you can just use my mute button and keep it rolling. 3030 white man, did you have a question, sir?
All right. Well, you guys be proud of what you're doing, and for the host, you can go to the Southern Poverty Law Center and see a whole.
All right. I didn't hear a question. I've had folks from the Southern Poverty Law Center on my program. They name called. They have $1 million budget, and I had my suspicions about that. I've been to their website. Right on. One thing I did want to get in before we concluded. We've done our 2 hours. One thing I did want to get in. You all said you're affiliated with the Occupy Wall Street movement, and I've been very suspicious and critical of that movement from day one, just because I've seen a lot of white people involved, and I know what it means to be a white person, particularly given the history. You all said that, or I know at least Mr. Swaye, you said that you didn't have the history with regards to white people alleging or suggesting, pretending maybe even, that they're working against racism, white supremacy. I have a degree in history, and I have seen this before with the Civil Rights Movement, Students for Democratic Society, the Weathermen. There is a considerable history of white people, particularly young white people, who are college age, 20s, early 30s, who have come out for a while and said, we're against racism. We don't support this, and down with the man, down with the establishment. There was a lot of that in the 60s and 70s. And these folks, after they had their fun, they got out of the streets, put on a suit, cleaned up, and what about the business of maintaining the system of white supremacy? And a lot of what I've seen with Occupy Wall Street, it has looked very similar to what I saw with Students for Democratic Society, the Weathermen, what happened in the 60s. And I thought it was interesting because I think you all are the first white people that we've had as guests on the program who've been affiliated in some way with Occupy Wall Street. And I wanted to just make sure that I say that to you all so you could hear. Just when I see Occupy Wall Street, to me, nothing about this looks like a group of people who are serious about ending the system of white supremacy, replacing that with a system of justice. And to be truthful, I can't really say that I've heard anything at the time that you've been here that would change my opinion. It sounds very similar to what I've seen before. Just some of the responses to questions, not answering certain questions. As you said, the hemming and hawing, to me, that would just further evidence that I just don't think this is anything other than young white people having some fun and giving the appearance. That illusion is very powerful for non-white people. The illusion, the belief that there are some white people who are not racist, and or that there are some white people who are going to be rehabilitated. They were racist, but they're not going to do this anymore. They're actively working on cutting that out. And I just don't think that that's true. But I think the illusion, that illusion has a lot of power over non-white people in keeping us from changing the way that we function with regards to white people. And I just wanted to say that. If you all want to share any thoughts, I would love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, I would say that that's what scares me the most about Occupy, is that as it usually does in history, white males like to take over and pretty much dictate how things are going to go. And I think that that's pretty much what happened with Occupy. But I don't think of Occupy in that way. I'm trying to see it as people who see something better for themselves and their neighbors and people that they don't know. And I think that it's very revealing that it took, the middle class to disappear, and for some white people to feel uncomfortable, for them to come out and be like, hey, this is wrong. And then they had to open their ears to black and brown people who said, hey, don't you see this going on? And then they're kind of like, oh yeah, you too. So sometimes, they'll have a march against police brutality or against stop and frisk. That really does scare me about Occupy, but I think it's an awakening of people's consciousness, them realizing that most of what they've been told throughout their lives is probably untrue, and that they have more power than they know, and that collectively we can do something about it, and recognizing where the power is and how to defeat that power. I think that's what Occupy is about, and we already know that white people aren't going to come in and save the day, and in the end, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think that's enough.
Mr. Swaye?
Oh, yeah. No, Occupy's had some different phases since it began, but throughout, and it's going to be plagued with the same, it's going to replicate systems in the larger society, and it's going to continue to do so. It's whatever Occupy turns into, whatever that consciousness that, oh my God, I've been duped. Everything I've been told is a lie, and it's interconnected, and it's had this effect here and this effect there. That wherever that consciousness goes, and whatever actions that's able to bring about in people that otherwise would have maybe been inactive, who can say? But no, we're going to be plagued with. It's our language, it's the way we sit, it's our understanding of what is a meeting, what is an event. All of these things are so layered in whiteness. You can't. I haven't found a meeting yet where white men are willing to be silent in any sustained or meaningful way. And so until we get some silence, we're not gonna have an answer to that. But as long as white men are speaking, that's going to be problematic for the indigenous or transgender or differently abled or anything that is not this whole white, ostensibly Christian, heterosexual American male is going to suffer from a white voice in the room, I think.
Sorry, Gus, can I ask another question of each before they leave?
Sure thing.
Okay, I have a question for both of you. My first one is for Ms. Gonzalez. Since you say that you function as a white female, and many of the officers that you do observe on the stop and frisk, since I live in New York, I'm sure that many of those officers are non-white males and females. So and you said that you want them to know that you're watching them. And would you say that as a white female, having a white female standing around watching non-white police personnel, whether they're male or female, that could be considered a form of racism for those individuals feeling that you are racially intimidating them because you as a white female are a symbol of power, and even though they supposedly are in positions of power, you wielding a camera and watching and observing them, would you say that that's a form of you possibly practicing racism against those individuals?
I guess I could see how it would seem that way, but number one, I don't feel as powerful because I am a woman and they are male. That's first of all. So that dynamic is hard for me to get over. And then being that they're working for a racist institution, I wouldn't consider what I'm doing as being racist. In fact, what I'm doing is trying to stop stop this racist system from continuing. So I guess, if you took off their uniform, and to someone who doesn't understand what those officers are meant to be doing and what I'm there trying to accomplish, it would seem that way. But no, I don't feel in any way whatsoever that what I'm doing is racist. I don't stand on my street corner and watch young men who are told to pull up their pants. I'm not watching them. In fact, I don't feel suspicious of them at all. I've never had a bad encounter in that way, so what would I have to be afraid of? But an officer who happens to be black and happens to be carrying a gun and also happens to be spying on young men who look like them, no, I can't say what I'm doing is being racist.
I'm using race consciously, and my behavior with black officers and white officers is different, and it shows up that way on video. And I've just kind of made it. I'm working on thinking about what that means, and am I taking, I don't get to see a Ray Kelly or Bloomberg every day, and to really stick it to them. So a lot of the times, if I'm stopping a stop and frisk that's happening, the officers may not be white, and I'm aware that I'm using that, and that's something I have to think about. You don't want to be out there publicly shaming anybody in general. That's not the work of a peace activist. But I think we'd have to say that, like, when I'm dealing with officers of color, I take liberties that I don't necessarily. I think the video evidence will show that I'm not necessarily taking the same liberties with white officers, who I think I probably know societally have a little bit more leeway. If one of them wants to give me a good punch in the jaw, it's likely that the white community will say I asked for it, I was mouthing off, whereas it seems to me, and I'm acting in ways that it seems like it's unlikely that I'm going to receive some kind of violence from an officer of color in broad daylight. Not to say that it's broad daylight all the time, but I think race is. I'm acting racist in my interactions with black or brown officers in the same way that I'm acting sexist in my interactions with female officers. And I'm thinking about it. So much so that, I don't know where that'll go. I don't know what something in my interactions with officers is going to have to mature and shift as I continue doing what I'm doing. And I suspect it'll be something. We haven't had black officers and brown officers leaking in ways that have gotten to my ear yet. I'm sure people are leaking, but I suspect that we'll be building alliances with black and brown officers that are going to give me better insights into the racism that I'm enacting in those situations.
And one other question I had for you, the male guest, is you mentioned something about envisioning a time or a possibility of a removal of the police apparatus. Was that correct? Because I heard you mention that earlier, and I wondered where did you get that concept or thought? Because it sounds very similar to the subplot of the new Batman movie, and I wondered if that was an outgrowth of that. So, is that?
No, I haven't seen the movie, nor do I know much about it. But no, I think we're talking about community control basically, and how centralized do we want to be? Obviously, we've got. I'm told there are major security threats because this is New York. Everybody envies us and is jealous of our freedoms and wants to really stick it to us. So we're going to need some apparatus that looks at that threat. But the way we really address that threat is not through up-arming ourselves and creating a police state, sort of an open-air prison camp 5. I think the way that we're going to work on that is by, finding out why we're disliked. And I think that's all the international stuff that we're hearing about terrorism. The language is the suspicious, the use of suspicious. All the language is exactly what people living in the impact zones in New York City are dealing with. So everybody's talking about ways to have community control. We can't elect our commissioner. We can't reject the commissioner. We can't elect the captain. We can't reject them. Officers don't have any residency. There's no independent CCRB. This is a privately funded organization that does whatever it needs to do, and everyone needs to be thinking about a world where this doesn't exist and how we ensure safety of the most vulnerable members of our society within that context. And I think everybody's got to know that NYPD is too big to fail, must be broken up, and the blue wall of silence is going to have to come down brick by brick, and it's going to take people resisting. They're being told in this city, if you see something crazy, you see something weird, you see something out of the normal, make an arrest. We'll figure out the charges later. And these officers, it's not a nice thing to say maybe, but they lowered the wages of police officers in this city to attract a lower caliber of thinker. And that's what they've got. And so that which is weird or out of the norm, it's a shrinking definition of what is weird. And basically, if you're not out there buying stuff and you're not consuming, you're going to be targeted. And if you're doing anything out of the normal, you're going to get a ticket written. And in this city, they will figure out the charges at some other point. That's just unfortunately where we're at. We're talking about 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids from Long Island and Staten Island who are now armed, and they have their 5 days of sensitivity training, and they're told to go make numbers. It's not. We can't. If we continue to accept the idea that policing is natural, that some outside force is going to come in and control us and clean up after us, I think we've already failed. We have to assume that it's not natural and it's not sustainable, and we need to make plans for that eventuality.
Interesting.
Or else we're doomed. The other thing is we can plan all we want, and we can be doomed. They got a $4 billion budget, and they spend a good part of that on marketing, and that comes up in that's TV shows, that's just all the different. We're expected that torture work, all the different things they market to us through TV. This is all part of it. We could be past a point of no return. There's always that chance that we're just too late on this, and the police state, has already grown to the extent that it's not shrinkable. We can't break it up, and that's just that. We're going to continue to live with abridgment of rights, and we're going to continue to be incarcerated at absurd rates.
We had New York person that dialed in. I hate it when people wait till the last minute. Did you have a quick question? 3358. Did you have a quick question?
No, not anymore.
Oh, right on. Cool. Before we wrap up, Mr. Swaye, what are some of the liberties? Because I thought that was very important. What are some of the liberties that you take with non-white officers that you don't take with white officers? Like as specific as you can be.
I don't know how it manifests exactly, but I really feel like I'm able to contain. We were talking about anger earlier. You mentioned anger, or a caller did rather, and it surfaces for me. It bubbles up at odd times, but I find I'm most. I feel like it's odd to me as a white person, because I'm not taught any kind of numbers or anything like this. It's still odd to me that every single black and brown person is not involved in the struggle. I haven't quite got it in my head yet that there's repressive measures that are keeping people from acting in ways they would like to. There's systems of diseducation. I mean, I'm still at the point where I expect that black officers are going to wink at me and go, "Yo, I'm on your side too. Look, this is a shit. It's a bad system, and we're gonna have to work on this." But so every time I'm not greeted as some sort of a co-conspirator, there's something in me that makes me think, why doesn't this person get it? Can't this person see how they're ravaging this community for profit? I think I expect more of a black officer, and that's insane. We're all going to the same goofy public schools. None of us know what we're doing. Black officers, white officers, everybody. When they tell you they're really doing their job and that's what they're doing, it's the same thing my father said for 40 years in business and my mother said for 30 years in teaching. Everybody's trying to do their job. And these guys' job just happens to be violence. But I still think I expect more from black officers. And it hasn't borne itself out to be true in any way that a black officer or a brown officer is going to be more sympathetic to a movement to stop stopping the person than a white officer would be necessarily.
I still didn't really hear specifics. Like, what are some of the things that you do as a white person when it's?
I use more. I think I slip into a familiarity with officers of color. I think I maintain a formal distance from white officers for a longer period of time in my interactions before giving in to something more formal or inquisitive. I think. Does that say it? I think I take an informal tone more. I'm willing to use accusations. I'm more verbal. I'm flexing more of a verbal muscle because I think in those moments that are tense for me, something in me still perceives that I can get away with it.
Wow, fascinating. I would encourage folks to rewind to the earlier part of the dialogue when we were talking about, oh man, if they're non-white enforcement officers, that's non-white people being racist. I would say now put those two segments of the interview together. That would further illustrate what I'm saying about non-white people. I wouldn't care if they're the chief of police. If you're non-white, you cannot practice racism, white supremacy. You are a victim on the plantation. You got a black person with a gun being controlled by a white man with no gun, just using words.
Right.
Brilliant illustration. And he says that he's not very informed about racism. He's still learning. But would it be accurate to say, just testing our him and haw here, would it be accurate to say, Mr. Swaye, you as a white man, that you are an admitted racist, white supremacist? Would that be correct?
Oh, I'm sad to say. I got to be classified as a white supremacist. I think I could be classified as nothing else. That's probably the biggest part of my identity right now. That I'm conscious of. That I have these deeply troubling thoughts that are oftentimes not my own.
I appreciate the honesty. That would help us fast forward, non-white people, that would help us fast forward, and not being surprised. If you get a white person who says that, to not stomp up and down and be angry and that sort of thing, you shouldn't be surprised. That's the world in which we live. You should expect that, appreciate the honesty, but keep that in the forefront of your mind. That will help us fast forward. Fascinating broadcast. Really appreciate the two of you taking some of your time out your Wednesday to speak with us. The YouTube page, again, you can check out some of their video clips. It would be fascinating. I don't know if you all can do this, but it would be great if we could observe some of those interactions when you all are talking to non-white officers, to kind of compare and contrast when you're talking and filming white officers. If you could upload those, that would be a great counter-racist study to kind of see how that plays out. The YouTube channel, it's Christina, 91686 if you want to check out some of their video footage. But that would be great. Do you think it would be possible to upload more of the footage so we could kind of observe that for ourselves and make our own observations?
Yeah, we're working on it. We've got lots of footage, and we're making sure that we make much of it available to everyone who wants to see.
Okay.
I don't know if we're saying goodbye, but I wanted to make sure I said thank you. Thanks for sharing your ideas.
Yeah, we appreciate honest dialogue. It's something that we need more of. This is what will help us achieve the goals that we're going for.
Oh, for sure. I always appreciate honest dialogue from white people and non-white people. I think that will help us solve the problem. But yeah, I would love to see that. If you all could get that the videos up, that would be, man, I would spend a lot of time on your channel, and I would promote. I would tell other people, go to YouTube, Christina 91686, and check out those videos and see if you can note differences in the way that they function when it's a non-white officer as opposed to a white officer. So yeah, I would appreciate checking that material out. Thank you all again.
It's Christina G.
Thank you. Thank you. I left out the G. Christina G. 91686. Christina G. 91686. You can check out the YouTube channel. Thank you for correcting me, Miss Gonzalez. Cool. Thank you all so much. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Keep up the work that you're doing, and we would love to have you back. I'm sure listeners, they've been listening attentively, so I'm sure we would love to have you back on the program if you all be willing to chat with us again.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right on. Enjoy your evening, and we will be in touch. Take excellent care.
Thank you, too.
Right on. Good evening. Wow. Context of White Supremacy. Fascinating. Fascinating. Whew. Man, oh man. I will give myself a little commercial so I can have a sip of water. If you all have any comments you would like to share. Hi, Delisha. The rest of the folks can do that as well. I need a second to take a sip of water. We will be right back after a quick commercial break. Context of White Supremacy.
RacismDaily.com, your number one source for global news reports on race, racism, and overt actions of white supremacy. From Asia to the Americas, to Europe, to Australia, to Africa, racism is not a thing of the past. It is our current reality. Be informed. Be globally informed. You should be the first to know. RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Do you need a one-stop shop for all of your multimedia needs? Triumphant Multimedia is a skilled team of professionals with a passion for great marketing and chic design. Our specialties include consulting, brand development, copywriting, and creative graphic design that's second to none. We also offer photography, photo retouching, videography, and video editing. At Triumphant Multimedia, our goal is to provide highly effective creative solutions built to suit any individual need or budget. Give us a call at 678-732-8067 or check us out online at trimultimedia.com.
everyone, welcome. This is Justice with the C.O.W.S radio program. If you want to learn about, understand, and counter racism, white supremacy, be sure not to miss a C.O.W.S episode. We keep them jammed, packed with constructive information to sharpen your use of words to help eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy, ASAP. Also, to be able to invest in my counter-racist efforts, co-hosting the C.O.W.S radio program, please visit my blog, justdojustice.blogspot.com.
You're just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
I got an uncle real crazy. My Uncle B, 55 years old, hates white people, married to a white lady. And he's sitting around going, these crackers ain't shit, except for Susan. And he tried to explain the whole thing to me one day, say, yeah, I got a white wife, I love her, she love me, that's all that matter. But I tell you this, if the revolution ever come, I'll kill her first. Just to show these crackers I mean business. Motherfucking cracker ass, motherfucking cracker. Shit cracker, motherfucker. Hey, hi, honey. Motherfucking cracker, I'll kill my cracker kids too.
Context of White Supremacy. Man, I'm glad we are not doing a program tomorrow. I will need a day to recuperate. We had a John Brown mention and the whole nine. It had been a while since we even had a John Brown reference on the program. Lord Jesus. I will say one thing. The broadcast this evening, it took a different turn. I think when I posted the video back on Sunday, we were supposed to do this program on Sunday, and I looked when I saw them. I had seen the posters, right, that were put up, and then I had seen them do video interviews. And Mr. Swaye, when I saw the videos, I said, okay, I think this is a white person. Miss Gonzalez, I was not sure. I was looking, and the accent and the whole nine, I was not sure. I was like, this could be the quote-unquote white Hispanic. I'm not sure. And I posted the video on my Facebook page, and I asked people, I said, what do you think the racial classification of these people is? And I think several folks, they said, yeah, I think the guy's a white man. The female, I'm not sure. Racially ambiguous. Hearing her on the program, I picked this up just being in Seattle, being around when you're in an environment where there is a lot of sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, and you end up with offspring where their racial classification is ambiguous or not clear. If you're a non-white person, some of those folks, I just label them as racist suspects. I don't hurt my head trying to figure out if they're white or non-white, because I have bumped into this more than once. And some of these people have even said from time to time, I get to be accepted as white. I think she was saying, depending on how I wear my hair, this, that, and the other. I'm not going to hurt my head trying to figure that out. If I have any suspicion that you might at any time be allowed to function as a part of the white supremacist army, you are a racist suspect. I suspect that you could be a racist. That's the way that I'm going to function with you. That's the label that I would have to use with Miss Gonzalez. I really did not get clarity around whether or not she's a white person. She said she classified as white, self-classified as white growing up. She said it varies depending on how she dresses and that sort of thing. I have no doubt that she could lose her locks, cut her hair, put on a dress suit, put on a skirt, stop protesting in the street. She could be accepted as a white person. I have no doubt about that. I don't feel bad. I don't feel sorry. I kind of was thinking before the program, oh, okay, I'll be talking to a white man, non-white female. That was what I was thinking. As the program went on, that dropped totally. It was, I'm talking to an admitted racist and a suspected racist. Yeah, that's Gus's view on that. The program, I had intended for it to be a little different. I did want to spend more time focusing on what they actually do around the cop stops and some of the other video footage, but it just, I I think it became more important just with the admitted racist on the program and some of the different buckets of words that he was throwing out and not answering questions, and it just kind of switched up from the original intent. I'm cool with how things went, but yeah, that was not the folk. Transgender, yeah, man, we got John Brown and transgender, Lord Jesus, woo. Anywho, yeah, I would say that is another example of why I say the sex between white people and non-white people is terrible, because it works out to the disadvantage of non-white people every time. If I am a white person, I'm not confused about her racial classification. I just make up my mind. I say that she's a white person, I say that she's a non-white person, and bang, that's just all it is to it. I'm not confused, I'm not going to be harmed. I just make a decision about whether I accept her as white or not, and that's just it. Non-white people are the ones who end up being confused and thrown off base and that sort of thing. This has been the first time that we've talked to someone, or that I've talked to someone on the program who's a part of the Occupy movement. I would say this is another illustration. Man, I have no regard for anything going on with the Occupy Wall Street movement. It is total folly. White people, get out. They've done this. If you need a quick catch up, right? This has happened before. I would say there's a documentary, The Weather Underground. This is a white organization from the 1960s, Students for Democratic Society, right? They were operating in the mid-1960s. This was white college students in about 20s, as I said, late teens, 20s, maybe even late 30s. And they were saying, hey, we want to get involved in the civil rights movement, down with the man, racism sucks, yeah, we're going to get involved and do our thing, Martin Luther King inspired us, Malcolm X, yeah, right on, off the pig. And so they ended up getting a more radical element of Students for Democratic Society, which became the Weathermen, right? These are white people. This documentary is fascinating, and if you don't watch the whole thing, you can probably get it on online. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, if you don't want to rent it or what have you, there's one segment. I'm stunned that they left this part in. Fred Hampton. Toast to Fred Hampton, black person who gave his life fighting against racism, white supremacy. Fred Hampton comes on and he says, man, these folks with the Weather Underground are a bunch of muddlehead misfits. And he just gives it is beautiful. He just gives like a 30-second synopsis of his views on what these folks are all about. This is foolishness. There's nothing constructive going on here. Next question. And I just thought it was brilliant. Fred Hampton. The legend of Fred Hampton. Awesome example of counter-racist effort. Anywho, Weather Underground, you can check it out. But that'll give you, in my view, the history of white people who come out and allege, particularly younger white people, allege, pretend, act like they are working against racism, white supremacy. Yeah, we'll get out here, roll around in the street for a little while, hold some signs, protest, no justice, no peace, off the pig, yeah, and then, all right, we've had our fun with that. Let's go clean up and let's just get back to the business of stomping on these niggas. We had our fun. In fact, we had on the program Bill Ayers. He was in all of that. He was a member of all of that. Now he is a distinguished professor at Northwestern University. Distinguished. That's his title. A distinguished professor. Bill Ayers was blowing up government buildings. He was one of the FBI's most wanted. You can Google him, Bill Ayers. He doesn't even get fussed at now. He is a distinguished professor. They fussed at President Obama for even having dialogue with this guy. They're like, I can't believe it. He's talking with a terrorist. This guy's been blowing up buildings. They didn't fuss at Bill Ayers. Nobody said we need to revoke his tenure. We need to fire him. How can he be a professor at the University of Illinois? This is a terrorist. He's blowing up buildings. Nope. Let's even take away his title of distinguished professor. Nope. None of that. Clowned in the street. Now I'm a distinguished professor at the University of Illinois. And publishing books on racism, and I think they even adopt non-white children. That's how hard white people clown practicing racism, white supremacy. Fascinating program. Man, I need some ginger. I need to chill for a minute and declog my mind. Unbelievable. And that white suspected racist, she had the audacity to say there are plenty of white people who've given their lives to work for non-white people. My brain almost fell out of my head. Minnie B, S. Your lines are open. I will get 3358 as well. Am I incorrect? You all can check me if I'm misquoting her or putting words in her mouth that she didn't say. You can check me on that. It is my recollection, and I'll listen to the recording. She said there are plenty of white people who have given their lives for non-white people. Did she say that, or am I wrong?
That's what I heard.
Okay.
I heard that. And I definitely felt that she was alluding. I knew that the John Brown reference was going to come up, which is exactly why I asked them the direct question if they fashioned themselves as a sort of new John Brown. Just something about her tone in particular suggested to me that that was how she envisioned herself for the work that she's doing. And just, I mean, I'm ignorant. I'm a victim. I am uninformed, so I could be incorrect. But the whole spiel just sounds like two young white people who are positioning themselves to eventually take all that footage and make a documentary, put together a book, and do it Tim-wise.
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask her, because I'm still confused on that. Since she was a Hispanic, she said, or whatever, I just want to know what her definition of a Hispanic was, because just to muddle through the confusion to see how more confused she was, if she even had a definition of a Hispanic. Just so that to expose these classifications, man. I mean, you know, your mother's. Did she say her mother was white and her father was Hispanic, or?
Yeah, that's what she said.
So I was like, you know, because to me, a Hispanic is a black person. So she couldn't understand if she was white or black or mixed or mulatto, or she what did she classify herself as? She can't even figure out what she want to classify herself at. So I was.
She said she was white.
Get it?
Well, she said
she
white.
finally got around to it. Oh, okay. Because there was a lot of words involved. I almost fell asleep. You know, I couldn't understand what she was saying sometimes. So I got lost in translation when she was talking. So I was like, is that a yes? Is that a no? Is that a, I don't know, you know.
Well, I think that she is white and white identified in her interactions with folks, and I particularly picked up on when she talked about she wants them to know that she's watching them. And I realized there's a whole power dynamic that's there with these two individuals that just seem to, and I strongly suspect that the bulk of the enforcement officers that they're observing in these so-called stop and frisk, I strongly suspect that they're non-white officers.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, because, you know, he says he only deals with non-white officers. That's what I thought I heard. And my ears, you know, really pegged up, because he's telling us that he can get away with stuff with the non-white officers, whereas the white officers, they sock him in the face, and the white people would just go, "Oh, well, you deserved it." But he knows he's not going to get beat up by black officers, so he could push the envelope. So I'm like, okay, what is your real intention? Because the main people that are causing all of these problems are the officers that you claim to be, out there trying to stop with the stop and frisk. These are the people that are enforcing this stuff. So why are you following the black people around?
I think it was very telling, the fact that she got arrested more times than he did, and she lost her job and he didn't. I thought that was very, very interesting.
I also thought it was interesting that they had the resources to have friends and family members who are keeping them afloat while they're doing this John Brown experiment that they're doing, and that they both said they could keep this up for a few more months before they had to put some resumes out there, which really strikes me as more of a social experiment, and they've invested so much money into cameras and so forth. It really just sounds like two individuals who wanted to go to film school or something like that, or wanted to do a documentary and realized that this is a very good angle to do stop and frisk, and that could be their thing, and they could be on the white privilege conference.
Hey, let's take it a little step further. How far would it be far-fetched? How far-fetched would it be if they were going to be using this way down the line to run for office? I mean, community organizers, community activists, you're setting yourself up in line to do this and that. You're getting supported by your family and friends. You got your arrests on record. I mean, it looks like to me it's just a large setup, because these people did not say anything to me. It gave me the idea that they had a plan in place. You see, I mean, everything was like they didn't have an answer for anything. It's like they're grassroots, but well, I don't know exactly what I want to do. Or we tied with this group, but but it's controlled by white men. Well, what were the white men doing? What was their plan? Did you go along with their plan? What was your plan? Do you have a plan? And how far are you willing to take it?
I found the white male to not be credible because he kept alluding to the fact that he was uninformed about racism, uninformed about history. But when I asked him his racial classification, he seemed very, very informed in breaking down what so-called ethnic Jewish person he would be classified as, and how that works down. So he seemed like he was pretty solid on his whiteness, and how
he became real aware then, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he was very clear about that. I mean, he sounded like he was reading from Nell Irvin Painter's book, The History of White People. He was really clear about how he had his white card.
Yeah, he started getting a little better with his words too. Just a little better, but we saw right through him.
I also suspect that as a result of some of the activities that they're doing, that they are going to put a lot more of non-white people in harm's way from the backlash against much of what they're doing, because there will be some non-white people who are less informed and very confused about how racism, white supremacy acts and behaves, and they may go out there and believe that they can go out there and function like this white male and female and start pointing cameras at the police officers. And me being a person who lives in New York City, who interacts with NYPD on a day-to-day basis, I know that that would be a very grievous mistake for non-white people to start following this practice.
So are you saying that in New York that it's white people who can it's only because they're white that they could possibly get away with this activity?
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
I mean, because I see in this city, I see white person getting into all sorts of shouting matches and confrontation with non-white officers on a consistent basis. Things that a non-white person would never consider saying to a white officer, I see them saying to black officers and Latino or Asian, so-called Asian or Arab officers. I see white people getting into such conflicts with them that it's unbelievable. Some of the things they say to these people, they jump in their face. They say, I can have your badge. Do you know who I am? I've heard them call police officers nigger and all sorts of things.
He admitted that early in the program. That was like in the first 30 minutes, I think, when they first came on. I addressed that with him and saying, because he has videos where he's like chasing the commissioner, Raymond Kelly. He's chasing him down, yelling at him and throwing papers on the ground. And I told him, I said, there's no way a black person could do that and, you know, not have white people respond in a very different manner if a black person tried to do that. And he acknowledged that, but that was like way, way early in the program.
I thought it was funny that caller that called in the first caller that called in and started rambling on and on. I'm glad you stopped them, Gus, because I was getting a headache just listening to this guy. I thought he might have been an agent or maybe a troll. Saying his family raised him, he was raised by a black family, all that other nonsense.
Talk about it. He was on from the beginning of the program too, like from the very beginning. I think from the time that the guests started talking, he was on and with his hand up too. Like he wasn't just listening. He had a hand up like, I'm ready to talk. Yeah.
I heard that. I was like, okay, what? What's that got to do? What? I wasn't sure who was talking. I wasn't sure who was talking. I wasn't sure if it was the guy that was somebody that called in, because I had missed some information when he said that, when that guy said that. So it was a caller. It wasn't the guest. Okay. All right. Well.
Northern Ireland fighting against people. It was interesting.
Oh, don't forget he was raised by black people while his white parents went, what were they? They went down south for Kumbaya.
No, he said to be part of the movement. He was talking about the 60s, right?
Right.
I think he was talking about the 60s. They went down there to be with Martin Luther King and all this and all that. And I was like, well, they was down there for 6 years? What? How long was this going on for? I was like, man, is it on thick or? And then Gus just cut him off. I was like, oh my God, thank you. There is a God. You get your cool points for that one.
I mean, there have been countless white people who were raised by black people. In fact, that's what the whole purpose of slavery was about. White women didn't want to take care of their kids, so they got black women to be their wet nurses. So I didn't understand what was the point of him even bringing that up. That was just another painful reminder of how they've taken advantage of black people.
Yeah, those black people probably didn't even get a dime to take care of their kid either. If it was true.
The help.
Yeah.
Steve Martin and the Jerk.
Oh, I thought of that too. Good one.
Yeah.
I just found for those two people, there were two people, and they didn't have anything between the two of them, constructive to say about the activity that they were doing, when they truly could be a form of frontline soldiers if they wanted to be or had it in them. And that's why I think that they're totally suspect, CIA suspects.
Yeah, I'm very suspicious of their activity, and I would caution anyone from trying to implement their model of what they call resistance, because if you are a non-white person, I guarantee it is not going to be the same result for you as it has been for them. I mean, they supposedly are caused. I mean, even the enforcement individuals identified them as professional agitators. Professional agitators. I mean, if it would have been non-white people, they wouldn't have called them professional agitators. They would have been calling them scumbags or losers or, troublemakers, not professional agitators. So,
really?
Yeah. So I thought
that is telling. That is telling, because maybe they got, well, that means they could have a lot of money behind them. If they have a lot of money behind them, they have other agendas going on. I'm still really stuck on, why is he focused on non-white police officers? What is he trying? What kind of information he's trying to get by studying the non-white police officers, when he knows that the white officers are the one that's causing the trouble? I mean, is he studying them to figure out, are they going to be on the team? Go ahead.
I was just saying, I don't think she at one point said that she is trying not to look at life through a racial lens. Did anyone hear that?
I did.
Yeah, I peeped that. Yeah, she did say
and
that.
He was saying that all this racial stuff is new to him. He's read a book. So the ability to look at the situations that they are supposedly witnessing, bearing witness to, as having to do with racism, white domination, neither one of them are capable of it.
I think that they're incapable of doing anything effective to dismantle the system, but I think that they're very capable of being beneficiaries of the system. I think that they found a niche. They found their Tim Wise 2.0 model, and they're going to ride it until the wheels fall off.
I think the fact that the white, the racist white male, I think the fact that he has 2 Ivy League degrees is very telling. I mean, and plus he's like 10 years his senior, which I didn't know that at the beginning of the program. I just found that out in the chat line.
I don't know. Being arrested 9 times, that can jack up your life. If I understand it.
Not for white people.
Maybe it's a setup for her. And maybe he's setting her up to be a little bit more extreme. Maybe he's one of those CIA agents, like y'all saying. Because he was very telling when he said that. He uses his racism when he's dealing with non-white police officers. Why just deal with them?
Well, Gus has an image on his Facebook page with, or someone has, it's on the COWS Facebook page where there's a a white, long-haired male with, I think, he has a black enforcement officer in a headlock. And I think the caption says, how is it that this white person can get this close to a law enforcement officer?
You know the
image of that guy?
I hadn't seen it before. I'm looking now. It reminded me of Big B. Kell. He was on the program, that video he had of the snowball fight in the D.C. area when the black, and I think he was like chief of police. He wasn't just some foot officer. I think he was like chief. He had a high rank. And white people handled him quickly. He had a gun and they had snowballs, and white people win again. They got him demoted, fired, the whole nine. There's your racist black enforcement officer.
Yep.
So he did get fired?
He's not working as an enforcement officer at this point. I don't know if they did the, you're going to do early retirement or whatever the case may be, but he's not working.
I thought that's what I read. I thought he was forced into early retirement, something like that. But I wasn't sure. I didn't see no more information on it.
SDOT, I thought that was an excellent question in trying to get them to look through another lens as to get them to try to perceive their activities as being practicing racism with non-white law enforcement, but they couldn't see it.
I thought the white guy saw it.
Yeah, I thought he saw it as well.
I agree. The young lady seemed to be the only one having a problem with identifying herself. So
I think that she recognizes the power dynamic that she is playing, but she doesn't verbalize it because it doesn't fit the mode of what she presents herself as being a so-called peace activist. But being a peace activist means carrying a camera and saying, "Nigga, what are you doing with that gun? Don't you know I'm a white woman? Get against the wall, nigga. I got a gun. I got a camera. I don't care about your gun." So, she's a white woman with a camera. She's more powerful than a nigga with a gun. Or Spick with a gun, or Gook with a gun, or whatever other non-white person they encounter.
I have a hair question. When a white woman wears her hair in that is in supposedly dreads, is that a natural hairstyle? Would that be considered a natural hairstyle?
Not for her.
From what I hear, it takes a considerable amount of effort in order for a white person to get their hair to lock. My wife does locks and did locks for a number of years for people. And from what she explained to me, the process of a white person getting locks is very unnatural. It's a very, very tedious process. So they go to extreme lengths to get that sort of look.
And is that a statement, and do you know what that statement is?
I think that the statement is it's supposed to be a form of rebellion against other white folks, or at least it's supposed to appear that way. But more so than anything, I think that it is the cheese that lures non-white people into the trap of assuming that because this individual appears to be so-called ethnic looking or ethnic accepting or identifying, that this person is less likely to be a practitioner of racism, white supremacy, although they are undeniably a beneficiary of it. So I think that it allows them to get into the door with a lot of non-white people. I see a lot of white young people in Brooklyn who walk around with dreads on a consistent basis.
I bet you if the Rasta, if they were not a type of Christian, that they probably would think twice about locking their hair up. Because when white people do this, I suspect that they're trying to be like Rasta, not just any regular black folks or identify with any other black Americans, a particular type. And they're trying to quote unquote imitate spirituality when they can't. So I suspect that they're trying to imitate our Jamaican brothers and sisters. I think it was a form of rebelling against Babylon or Babylon or something like that.
Babylon.
Right? Isn't that the reason why they locked their hair? Originally started locking their hair, and then they ran a campaign called the Dreaded Lock or something like that. Forced the brothers stop, try to bombard them with their media blitzes about how the locks are a bad thing, the dreaded lock. See, but white folks, they still call them dreads. You see, they'll call them dread, but don't know the history. So they just playing.
5 minutes, another 5 minutes.
Well, my assessment is that it's not much different than the young white teenager who puts on baggy jeans or skinny jeans these days and puts on a fitted cap and classifies himself as a rapper or something, or calls himself hip-hop. I think that the mimicking of what they stereotypically perceive to be black culture is something that they've done as long as they've encountered us, as far back as slavery. You know, they would come amongst us and try to take on the posture or the style of the so-called slave to gain their trust. But the ultimate objective was always domination. And particularly knowing that non-white people seeing a white person voluntarily throw off the privilege of their whiteness to identify with a non-white person, they become a savior to them. I mean, and they'll do it for a few years, but then they get in their mid-20s and mid-30s, and then they say, okay, it's time to cut this hair, put on a suit, and go to work. It's a fact, when they're in their 20s or whatever, and if they want to come hang out in the so-called neighborhood, a certain type of neighborhood with a certain type of people, they want to smoke some weed and chase black women or date black men, and that's their calling card.
Okay.
I found that when I looked at her video and her image and then with the words coming out of her mouth, that I expected that she'd be more articulate with what she was doing and why. Because that hair is some form of definite of statement, and maybe it's just fashion. Well, thanks, Gus. I appreciated your questions and your patience with the guest.
Shooby-doo. Somebody said that, I think when they saw the video, when they were on RT talking about all this, and they were saying, I think the non-white female, or whatever, racist suspect, I think she's less confused. And even if I say she's non-white, even if I go that route, she's having sex with an admitted racist. Can't be that much clarity with that activity going on. Anywho, Bruce Fine, she commented consistently about the most dangerous white people frequently are the ones who allege to be working against racism and might even concede that they are racist. They end up being the most dangerous white people. They will end up with you having your guard down, suspicion down, pants down, the whole nine. They can really do a job on you unless you are super codified, and I mean soldier codification. Are you a white person? The suspicion is there. Bang. Minimum. The suspicion is there if you are not just thinking white equals racist. I don't care if you got dreadlocks. I don't care if you are doing stop and frisk campaigns forever. I don't care if you've been arrested 20 times. I don't care if you've dated 20 black males, 20 black females. I don't care if your mom adopted a non-white child. You are white. I already know what that means to me as a non-white person. You really got to be on the ball about that. If not, I suspect you're going to see increasing numbers of these sorts of white people, and they're going to be able to cause a lot of damage in confusing us and getting us to think, oh man, there's some cool white people. Have you heard Matthew Swaye? Have you heard Christina Gonzalez? These white folks are down for the cause, man. They got the scars to prove it and everything. Look at their rap record. Don't be fooled. We'll be back on Friday. The Bluest Eye. There we go. Told you I need a break. They tried my patience. Bluest Eye on Friday. Looking forward to the audiobook session. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Looking forward to hearing more dialogue. The audio, all that good stuff. Friday. Wow, so hater. I got disconnected. Sorry about that. Anywho, we'll be back on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Looking forward to hearing more dialogue. The audiobook, if you have not been tuning in to the sessions, you don't have to read anything. We're doing the audiobook for the Bluest Eye, so all you have to do is tune in and listen. We are, I guess by Friday, once we get done with the program, we'll be about halfway done with the book. So definitely tune in. Looking forward to hearing more dialogue, people's thoughts. I'll share some of the emails that people have sent to me as well around the book. I think people are getting something constructive out of Miss Morrison's work, which I suspected all along. It is a phenomenal book. You should read it as well. The audiobook is great, but I think you would also benefit from reading the words. Let's see. Anything else you need to get in? Y'all can be thinking about the prayer as well before we ride out. Right on. Miss Gonzalez emailed. She said she enjoyed it. Honest dialogue, blah, blah, blah. They would enjoy being back on the program. I would appreciate having them back on maybe some months down the road. I would just have in mind that 2 racists are coming on the program. I think if I had that in mind, it would be probably different starting out, as opposed to thinking that we got 1 white person and 1 maybe non-white person, which is how I started off today with. It would be kind of cool to see them 6 months down the line. What are they doing? Are they still doing this? That sort of thing. We'll see if we can make that happen. Anywho, does anybody want to do the prayer to wrap things up before we sign out? Right on. Let's see here. Yes, that is pretty consistent. All right, if we don't have any takers, I can do it myself. Always good to hear from the folks listening in, the texts and what have you. Bruce Fine, listening and commenting, taking studious notes. Delisha and the gang as well. Yeah, I felt like there was a lack of honesty around the racial classification. That's also an interesting dynamic. Talking to a couple that's engaged in sexual intercourse is quite interesting, because they will not snitch on each other. You'll just see them working as a team in the dialogue, which I thought was interesting too, particularly around the questions when Mr. Swaye didn't want to answer truthfully about Miss Gonzalez, whether or not he thought she was a white person or a non-white person. Quite interesting. Anywho, quickly before we ride out, invest if you think the program is constructive, listener supported. We appreciate everybody who has supported. Oh, bless me. Who has supported our efforts to stay on the air and do the programs, and share the links. Great to get the content to other non-white people if you think they would benefit from hearing these broadcasts. With that, we'll be back on Friday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Creator, please aid us in clearing all forms of confusion. Please help us to understand that we have enemies, dedicated enemies, who are waging war against us at all times. Please eliminate our sympathy for racist man, racist woman, racist child. We should have no tears, no prayers for white people. Help non-white people understand we have a duty and an obligation to replace the system of white supremacy with a system of justice immediately. That is our purpose for being on the planet. And as soon as we dedicate our purpose for existence to being the eradication of white supremacy, we will get help. Context of White Supremacy signing out. We will be back on Friday. Thank you all for tuning in.